Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to Gamers8 as we've got ourselves the final of the Brood War Legends tournament on the way here very soon. My name's Kalaris. Look at me, I'm looking cool. And we've got ourselves the... Ooh, geez, whoa, steady on. All right, what was that, ZG? That was painful.
People don't just use their phone for that.
No, apparently not. Actually, a real coin. I haven't seen one of those in years.
That's so odd. Yeah, exactly.
All right, but let's talk about it here. It's going to be Jaedong going up against FanTaSy. As we said in these previous series, actually, both of them looked fantastic. Really excited to see how FanTaSy is going to approach this, considering he's a little bit of an enigma right now. Of course, doing very well on ladder, but how is he going to go up against Jaedong here?
Well, that is a mystery, as was his game versus Bisu, but it was a clear statement from the beginning that, he came prepared, and he knows certainly the meta that's going on right now, but he also still has his trademark micro and his macro's fine and all that good stuff. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're still going to favor Jaedong just with his, like, the whole aura the mysticism. Exactly. Like, we're just like, it's Jaedong, but it really kind of is unfortunate because Jaedong will get this credit, not just because of that, but of course he's also a very good player right now, and FanTaSy still hasn't proven himself in a tournament recently. But it's unfortunate because, something we didn't get to talk about, I guess, so far is that FanTaSy really was on his way to being the top dog of Brood War when Brood War was unfortunately cut a little short in that era. Not quite able to win like the last OSL, for instance, even though he had a chance at it. So he maybe could have had eventually that same type of aura as Jaedong. But it just, it couldn't happen. And then he was a very fun player in StarCraft 2, but it couldn't quite happen there. But, if he comes back and then on such a big stage for so much money and just comes back as a shining star, he just like suddenly pops up and he just defeats Bisu and then Jaedong in an era where they are the pro gamers right now. FanTaSy's coming back, man. That would just be such a statement into the new era of Brood War. Yeah, definitely would be, definitely. The OSL you're referring to, I think I even watched that, but it was ages ago. I definitely did, yeah. It was Jangbi? Yes, exactly, yeah.
Oh, geez.
Nicely done.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is actually, how long is that? 11 years ago, I think, or something ridiculous? I think I watched it when I lived in Finland. That's 3 countries ago. It was my first actual LAN party. I've never been to a LAN party, where you actually bring like your computers and you go and have. So the Brood War fans that I befriended, who then forced me to get into Brood War, which I'm thankful for. Yeah, they invited me over and they're like, we're gonna watch and it's gonna be really fun. And then we actually saw one of our friends who had just moved to Korea. They focused on him because he was a white guy. No, his name was Caucasian Asian. Like that's actually literally his handle. And it was like, and we're like, oh my god, we know that guy. And actually, I remember all the time. At the time, everyone was cheering for FanTaSy in that group too. Even though Jangbi, well, he was a very good player, but but FanTaSy had this kind of a history as well as being a son of Boxer on the SKT team. I mean, it's just such a fun story between the two, but then I think we're talking once again a lot about FanTaSy because he is a little bit of the underdog. We're still a little tentative on his ability to actually defeat Jaedong. I mean, even the reason why we were kind of looking at Stalk a little bit closer in the previous series was to pull the veil back a little bit, is because we kind of thought that Jaedong was probably going to win. Pretty much. Kind of understand. But Jaedong, likewise, as in terms of like him being a favorite here, not too much of a surprise. And again, it seems like, he already mentioned it in the interview, etc., and even before that as well, really committing himself this time around. And I would love to see him go further in these ASLs, because the thing is that in ASL right now, there's actually so many great players, and for even Jaedong to kind of sometimes be a little overshadowed by all of these guys is quite impressive, considering how good he is as well. Yeah, both these players, there's so much I want to say about them, and I'm like, how much time do we really have so I can go into each one's history and how cool they are, and it's like how good they are right now. I'm gonna find out while we should talk. Yeah, I guess so. But I guess Jaedong, he's coming in as the favorite, and also I think as just almost like for the StarCraft 2 fans out there, the guy that they might even want to be winning, right? So there's a lot of probably bias happening to you guys. Camera just stand on me. That's happening where it's like Jaedong, like look how cool he is. But FanTaSy really did help to develop Brood War, and again, he was on the cusp of being one of the best Brood War players of all time. Then also specifically, he helped to revolutionize this matchup. So that's what's especially cool about it. Here we actually have a Jaedong feature to take a look at before we get into this final. So let's do that, and then eventually head over to the stage.
Jaedong is a super aggressive player. He made a name for himself as doing that, just knowing exactly when to strike, and that really worked out well with the face that he's really well known for, his very like serious, determined face. So when he gets in the mood, the tyrant, and you know he's going to be aggressive, he's just a super intimidating player to go up against.
이런 새로운 대회에 제가 참가하게 돼서 굉장히 영광이고 새로운 곳에 와서 또 좋은 경험할 수 있어서 굉장히 기쁩니다.
I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that Jaedong isn't one of the best and accomplished players of all time, right? I mean, look at how much he was able to do. He garnered the nickname The Tyrant for a reason during his kind of period back in Brood War. And even when we got him in StarCraft 2, it was a great pleasure watching him there. He might not have been the greatest of all time in StarCraft 2, but certainly in Brood War, everybody looks at him as such.
제가 브루드 워에서 활발하게 활동하는 이유는 사실 스타크래프트 2도 굉장히 오랜 시간 했었고 브루도 또 당연히 이제 제가 많은 경험을 했었는데 사실 저는 처음 시작을 브루도로 했기 때문에 그래서 가장 좋아했던 게 브루도고.
It's very hard to say what exactly makes Jaedong Jaedong because there's so many good things about his career. There's so many highlights. There is the famous rivalry with Flash. There's the way that he revolutionized every single matchup, actually. It's kind of hard. Like, basically everything about Jaedong is what makes him such a fantastic player. Jaedong absolutely redefined Brood War. Again, ZVZ was definitely what he was maybe most well known for, just because the matchup was pretty atrocious for many reasons before he came along. It's actually crazy. When you think about modern Brood War and the way that it is played, a large part of all the matchups for Zerg are due to him revolutionizing. So he's absolutely someone that impacted the history of Brood War.
I think Jaedong's StarCraft 2 retirement was probably a good decision in the end. I mean, going back to Brood War, where, that's what he's more known for more than anything compared to StarCraft 2. His skill set, as much as it worked in StarCraft 2, it proliferates through Brood War extremely.
그동안 이제 브루도도 하고 스타크래프트 2도 해서 많은 경험이 있지만 제 생각에는 제가 2007년에 첫 번째 스타크래프트 브루드워 이제 OSL 우승했을 때가 가장 최고의 순간이었던 것 같아요. 솔직히 말씀드리면 지금은 이제 그런 거를 생각을 하기 힘들 정도로 스타크래프트가 이제 이번 게이머스8에서 옛날의 저의 모습을 한번 보여드릴 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
Well, look at us two teleporting around, but it is time now as we get to this. It's the grand final here for the Brood War Legends tournament, and they are two legends. It's going to be FanTaSy going up against Jaedong. Best of 5 winner takes that $17,500.
You know who called this? Was FanTaSy. He absolutely knew he was going to be facing off against Jaedong. And, well, here we are.
I mean, last time they faced each other, it wasn't FanTaSy who won the game, but they did face each other in StarCraft 2 in 2015, and FanTaSy also won, so you really don't know what's going to happen in this game. أعزائنا المشاهدين، الآن المباراة هذه بتكون الفاينل معنا في الستاركرافت برود وور. الفاينل هذا الفائز فيه راح ياخذ $17,500 زيادة على كذا راح نبدأ بعدها في تكملة البطولة، لكن هذه المباراة بتكون من أهم المباريات اللي عندنا، الاثنين هم كانوا متوقعينها أصلاً.
One of the best things about rivalries between StarCraft 2 players is that they often occur between friends. So not only do they play in that tournament, but I got a hot tip from Saiyan that they actually played on the ladder pretty recently. And while I won't tell you who came out ahead because no spoilers for this match.
I really want to know. We're going to talk about this later.
أعزائي
المشاهدين لازم إننا نشوف ايش اللي ممكن يصير في هذه المباراة، لأنه الفائز مو بس إنه بيكون هو البطل، أيضا عندهم حسابات كثيرة لازم يصفونها على بعض، خصوصا إنهم تقابلوا في اللادر فترة جدا قريبة في ستاركرافت 2، فأكيد اليوم جايين عشان يكملون مباراتهم، يكملون مسيرتهم، لأن الهيستوري حقهم من 2007 وهو إلى الآن مستمر.
Well, I know FanTaSy has been ready for this since earlier this morning. Hopefully Jaedong is prepared as well, but if they're good, then let's bring them out. The legend, FanTaSy! He pioneered the FanTaSy build of Vulture and dropship play with Valkyries, but we'll see if that's what he can bring against Jaedong. He has been practicing, he's been moving up the ladder, but will that be enough preparation to take out one of the best Zerg in the world?
فانتسي الى اللحظه هذه ما وقف انه يكون لاعب محترف، سمعناه في المقابله قبل قليل يقول انه الشغف عنده موجود ويبي يكمل يكون لاعب محترف، والى الان ما طلع من الكومبتيتيف سين، لكن حتى خصمه نفس الستوري حقته والى الان مستمر. سمعناه ايضا في المقابله يقول انه المباراه هذه بتكون من اجمل المباريات، لانه اخر مره تواجهه في برود وور الشخص الثاني هو اللي فاز، بس خلونا نعرف مين الشخص الثاني، كلكم تعرفونه بس خلينا نشوف مين. The legend, Jaedong. جيدونغ افضل لاعب زرق في العالم، الشخص اللي يعتبر الجاد فاذر لكل الزرق بلايرز اللي موجودين اليوم من بدايه برود وور من 2006 2007 وهو الى الان مستمر في هذا التايتل. لكن اهم شيء انه في اخر مره تواجهوا كانت في بطوله في 2015 في كوبنهاجن، وقدر انه يقابل فانتسي مرتين. حدثني عن اللي صار في هذه المباراه لانه كان جدا عظيم، لان فانتسي فاز فيهم كلهم 2-0، فالحين حرفيا جاي يصفي حسابه.
In his interview, Jaedong said he's holding on to the memory of his excellent victory over FanTaSy in the OSL finals, but hopefully he also remembers that FanTaSy likes to do a little bunker rushing too. Whatever it takes to win, I know Jaedong is capable, but let's see how it all pans out in this best of 5.
ما هم فقط قدروا انه يتواجهون مع بعض في 2015، ايضا في اخر مره تواجهوا بعض في الاوسل برضه اللي فاز هو بيكون جايدونغ، فمره هو يفوز مره ثانيه يفوز، ما حد يقدر يعرف من النتيجه، لكن خلونا نشوف ايش بيصير في هذا الجيم.
FanTaSy, Jaedong, it's my honor to invite you to center stage once more to shake hands.
النهائي لستار كرافت برود وور اعزائي المشاهدين راح يبدا الان، الفائز على طول بياخذ اللاين شير من $50,000، خلونا نشوف من بيقدر يتغلب على الثاني، وعلى طول نروح مع المعلقين.
The Legends of Brood War here in StarCraft Remastered and Riyadh at Gamers8. It's going to be great, but you know who's even better? Our casters. You take it away, guys.
All right, guys, we are ready to get this going. I could not be more excited. I am Tasteless. With me is Artosis, and we've got one hell of a best of 5 here. This is FanTaSy versus Jaedong to conclude who is truly the legend of the Legends tournament.
This is an amazing tournament. We actually had a very fast round of 4, kind of one-sided, quick, aggressive games on both sides. But these two players coming out in kind of a dominating fashion. So very excited to see how they'll match up against each other.
Yeah, I got to say the matches leading up to this, a little bit surprisingly one-dimensional and a bit one-sided, but I guess that means we've got two powerhouse players here. And by the way, FanTaSy in phenomenal shape. Jaedong, he said it in his interview, he wanted to show the Jaedong of the past. Well, I think he certainly showed that versus Stork. Let's see if he can do it again here versus FanTaSy.
Yeah, if he can show that type of like old Jaedong ZBT, then I think he is going to be favored here. But do not underestimate FanTaSy. He's in great shape, and I feel like this would be an amazing return for him to the pro scene if he were to beat Jaedong tonight.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. Jaedong's certainly the favorite. You know, somebody who just knows how to pound away at his opponent. But FanTaSy clearly came into this with plans. I mean, the fact that he beat Bisu 2-0 is shocking, but the way he beat it kind of makes sense. He really had a very specific attack, a specific plan laid out, and it worked out. So here we get to see what happens as we go into game 1 in this best of 5. With these two players in the bottom left, in the red, our Zerg player, he is Jaedong. And in the upper left, his opponent, the Terran, he is FanTaSy.
All right, excellent. We're starting off here on Polypoid. This is a map that's been around for a few years now and is definitely a very good one, a very good kind of macro-esque map, leans towards longer games. There are some positional funny things that can occur in Terran vs. Zerg for this map. Like, for instance, if their spawns were reversed, this would actually be very Jaedong favored. But in these spawns, this should be a really good match. Like, there's no big advantage for either side based on where they started.
Yeah. I think this should be a pretty interesting one. The thing, though, I'm thinking about is that since FanTaSy did beat Jaedong in a pretty good time and attack, I don't know that he can do the same thing versus Jaedong, right? The matchup is different. The parameters the players have to follow are very different. And so I think if FanTaSy's going to win versus Jaedong, he's going to have to overpower him in probably a more normal game, probably in a late game TVZ.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And I wonder what type of style he'll show us, right? Like, there's been a lot of whisperings about the old FanTaSy style, TVZ, things like that, right? Some of these more mech-based, more 1-1-1-based builds that he used to like to use. But at least in this first game on Polypoid, he is going to go for a very standard barracks expansion, which almost always will lead into Marine Medic.
That's right. The FanTaSy of the past, when he was truly on top of the world, was one where the Zergs had a very hard time from the very start of the game all the way into the mid-game, figuring out what exactly their opponent was doing. It was just hard to get a read on it. And I think it was a real strain on the Zergs back then, but we're in a very different era and in a stage of StarCraft where we understand it on a much deeper level. And so with you saying what you said, Artos, is that it looks like it's going to be Barracks Command Center, meaning we're probably going to organically flow into mass Marines. I'm curious to see what kind of condition FanTaSy's standard TVZ Medic Marine composition is going to look like as far as control goes.
Yeah, and you know, Jaedong obviously has been back with Brood War for quite some time, so never mind.
Whoa, okay,
never mind. Anything that we said were foolish.
We should shut our stupid mouths.
Yes.
So all right, so it did look like Command Center first, and that's what he wants it to look like. But in fact, he's going to go right back into the ideas he had versus Bisu. This is going to be a very, very early time in attack, which I think is going to be disguised in a very smart way.
Yes.
And Bisu could get thrown off. This is actually very reminiscent to Game 1 versus Bisu that we already saw today with FanTaSy, and that worked out.
Yeah, somewhat. In taking a look at this, so just to explain it, guys, this is a one base Marine Medic Rush. This is a build that has not been considered good or strong in about 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen this utilized at the pro level. But because of the Overlord scout patterns, there's nothing here to spot this. He got rid of the drone. The build looked normal to Jaedong. He has his Marines out front to catch any Zerglings trying to come in. And in these spawns, you just don't really get an Overlord over the ledge. So he's holding 4 up front. That's not the weirdest thing. And Jaedong's just not going to know it's coming until it leaves the natural.
That's right. It's important to remember that Jaedong doesn't see this is coming. If he saw this is coming, it would look more like a build from 1999-2000. Oh my God. Okay, now he knows. But this gives Jaedong basically 5 seconds or so to try to whip up something to deal with this. And so the push is going to come down right now. He sees the fire bats, so he knows what's coming next. The Lings come in there, and they don't kill a single Marine.
No, he's trying to slow him right now. He needs sunken colonies up. That's going to be the only way to hold this. One has already started, a second on the way. He's putting another building out there to mess up the AI a little bit, a very common practice. Now, the Marines and Medics getting on top of these, this is very bad for Jaedong. This right now is looking like a FanTaSy victory. More Speedlings come out, start to surround the Marines there. They're actually doing a pretty good job considering.
And there's no sunk out yet. It should be a second out. It does finish. Are there enough medics? He runs the fire bat up the ramp.
But it gets caught. Beautiful move from Jaedong. That drone drill catching the fire bats. The 2 Lings coming up to kill the other one. Amazingly done. I actually have chills on my arms right now because this hold from Jaedong was so difficult. It was so masterfully done. Even that evolution chamber we saw him making was to make sure the Marines could not get close enough to gun everything down instantly. So Jaedong holds that by the skin of his teeth.
FanTaSy would have liked to have done a little bit more damage. It looks like he's getting ready to actually move in once more, possibly to have the medic tank the first shot here with the sunk and then move in. But where's the layer at? Okay, so the layer's long now done, and I think we probably have 6 to 5 Mutalisks about to hatch.
Yeah, those Mutalisks going to make it very hard to break in. The eBay only now being started, so he does have to keep this group out on the map. Without missile turrets at home, the Mutalisks would absolutely wreck him. So he needs the Mutas to have to deal with his Marines and Medics until he has his turrets up.
That's right. These fire bats are going to be staying out here to try to catch any more lings or drones. The Mutas come in here and begin to catch the stray Marines. You can see the problem Terran has with trying to rally Marines from here on out. Whether he wants to stay outside the Zerg's base or get back home, it's not going to be easy. Did he actually snipe a Muta there? I think he might have gotten one.
I think he just very damaged one right here. We should have some more Mutas coming out, though. 4 is a very low number. You can't one-shot Marines with that. Unless they just stimmed. Now he is adding a few more. He does have those couple of Sunkens, but notice how FanTaSy stayed out there for a little bit. Now he's got his missile turrets starting up. He's going to be able to get that anti-air defense he needs at home. And this game, like, I think there's a decent chance it actually just normalizes and goes into a regular-looking Terran Berserk.
I think you might be right about that. You know, the fact that the Marines created enough of a threat, the Mutas could never go into the main here of FanTaSy and start to kill workers off. And so instead, Jaedong's going to try to get whatever damage done he can. But he's honestly in overall pretty good control of this game. The fire bats can basically intercept anything that might try to run around. Until those Mutas clear that out, there's no way for Zerg to get a third base up.
Yeah, he's keeping that group of Marines and Medics pretty far forward. He is going to have to be careful because as this Mutalisk count grows, as he gets up to a full group of Mutalisks, that group of Marines and Medics can be picked off pretty quickly. So far, very good micro here from FanTaSy, trying to keep his Marines in such a way that such a position that they can't really do damage there. And you can see just how masterful FanTaSy is once again. He doesn't have missile turrets at his natural. Very few players would risk that, but he knows that Jaedong is too good to counterattack him right now.
Yeah, he knows exactly how to cut the corners that he needs to cut. And I got to say, you know, a lot of times when you see the one base play not end the game, it can backfire pretty badly, but so far so good. But as I'm finishing that sentence, it looks like we've got the Muta count up high enough to where you don't have to respect the Marines out there. In fact, you could take them head on. He gets those kills. He's going to deny the armory. I have to imagine that was for a Viking as well, or a Valkyrie as well, excuse me.
Yeah, most certainly that's true. Like, for 100%, that's what FanTaSy wants, is those Valkyries to really help push back the Mutalisks. Jaedong's counterattack here, though, it's killed some SCVs. It's delayed that armory quite a bit, delaying some of these turrets as well. He is going to fly out, taking quite a few turret hits, going to lose an additional Mutalisk, but he has more to reinforce.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. He has those 2 wounded Mutas. He can actually swap them out with 2 healthy ones here. And FanTaSy is really on his back foot, but that's kind of the ebb and flow of TVZ, even if this game didn't go that crazy early on. And from here, he just has to get that armory up. Now, having the armory delayed even a little bit means there's probably going to be 1 less Valkyrie out than we would have had. Maybe 1.5, but I'm not quite sure on the math on that. But basically, Valkyrie accumulation is key. By the way, Artosis, I cannot believe there's still 2 fire bats here.
I know, right? Those are just sitting there trying to catch like a drone coming out for a third base.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is something Jaedong is going to have to think about pretty soon. He also has to start considering that his Mutalisks are not going to do anything anymore. There's a lot of missile turrets, there's a good amount of bio, and he knows that there's another armory that's been made. So there is a very, like, small amount of time where the Mutas can do much more. Will Jaedong just go directly into lurkers? I think he needs to.
Yeah, he's going to have to get that next phase of tech. Here's that drone. And so I think even not seeing the drone leave, excuse me, you probably know it's out on the map, yes, right? Once those fire bats are killed off. So FanTaSy will probably have some pocketed scans. He could try to check for that a little bit later on. We've got at least the first Valkyrie that I've seen so far here. That's going to be paired with the Marines and the Medics to try to deal extra damage. The hatchery is going to be laid at the very bottom right corner of the map. That's the farthest travel distance from where FanTaSy is. And that's very standard. You always want your base to be down there in that location. We'll see when he actually throws the hatchery down, but we can basically assume that's going to be coming as soon as Jaedong has the minerals.
Indeed, he really does need to get that up. Now look, with 2 Valkyries, FanTaSy can just destroy these Mutalisks. Jaedong has to be very careful. 1 actually tanks the hits. He's trying to dive to get a kill. He actually kills 1 of those Valkyries, so that is solid, but he has taken a significant amount of splash damage here from this Valkyrie. Looks like it's going to come in once again. deals a lot of damage, kills off another Muta as well. Jaedong really needs to think about getting those lurkers ASAP.
He's going to go for that second Valkyrie. Oh my god, he's so ballsy to have them come out again like that. Now these Mutas are so low. There should be a tank inbound. And correct me if I'm wrong, Artosis, but normally you want to get one tank and start to push. There it is. And try to shell away at the entrance. Now, just imagine FanTaSy had kept that extra Valkyrie alive and then not had that armory interrupted. He would have been up to 4 Valkyries here, which is really tough. Overlords get killed, so supply blocks kick in. And we're moments away from this push actually commencing. There's 5 sunken colonies that are ready to go. There are lurkers here as well, but lurkers are not everything. You have to be able to actually overpower this push that Terran's going to send your way.
Now, it looks like his natural is going to be safe. He actually comes in once again, takes some Valkyrie hits. He is still killing off any Valkyries that he can. The Mutas still will be somewhat useful. And you can see, look at this, 2 lurkers. They go forward. For sure, these will be on hold position.
Okay, so he doesn't have to make the lurkers attack until he wants to. This actually could end the game for FanTaSy. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
Big moment right now, big moment. He brings up the Mutas, and there you go. He gets those Marines to stack up, getting insane hits with these lurkers, but there's so many Marines he scans, and he's actually going to be able to kill one of the lurkers. The other trying to get up the ramp. FanTaSy should push here.
Oh my god, is the scan too late? No, he's gonna be able to sidestep the shot, and this means the bottom right base will fall. There's no way that Jaedong can keep that. He does have hold position lurkers in a very funny spot. I don't know if it's going to play much of a role here. He's going to lose that one Hydra. And I will say right now, with the hatchery going down, FanTaSy favor here.
Yes, yes. That was a very funny moment because Jaedong with the hold position lurkers, he was looking to destroy FanTaSy. But if those had been pulled back to the third base on top of the ramp, FanTaSy can't break it with those Marines and medics. It's too cost inefficient. So, you know, I think this is a situation where Jaedong was like, let's try to finish him. Let's try to get into a greatly winning position. Instead, now FanTaSy is in a very winning position.
All right, the lurkers are going to inch forward here. And if FanTaSy's not watching, he'll lose this, but FanTaSy is so on top of it. By the way, no more energy in this medic, not medevac, excuse me. Here we go again. Oh my god, this is perfect.
Man, he's gonna go ahead and get at least 1 siege tank. Comes up and flanks the other 2. Are you kidding me? He kills 3 siege tanks here. A huge moment for Jaedong.
We're definitely getting the Legends match we wanted here for game 1. And with the tank count, I think it's at 0, right? Yeah,
it's
there are no
at
tanks.
0.
He literally can't push. And now we have this army of FanTaSy that's basically marooned on the map. It looks like he sees these lurkers are maybe sticking out a little bit too much. Decides to go and target that down. Looks like just one lurker will be able to stay alive, but this foothold outside the natural is going to isolate this group that FanTaSy has, and he really can't do much but try to buy time in the middle of the map. But I have to emphasize this. As much as we've seen FanTaSy get beaten up, he doesn't have an extra base, and oh my god, a miscontrol there from Jaedong. Snipe before the Dark Swarm can give him the cover.
Yeah, the big problem here is, like, Jaedong has made some really fantastic moves, but losing that third base, you can't play even bases against Terran. Nobody can.
Right.
So just the fact that Jaedong is sitting on 2 bases, no matter how well he's playing here, this is not going to turn into a winning position unless you get Defilers all the way into your opponent's natural. It's just not going to work out for you. So Jaedong needs to do more than he's doing now.
So we've got another push coming down here now. And remember, Firebats can deal damage through Dark Swarm, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're good against lurkers. You need to have a lot, and right now Jaedong's doing a great job with the Dark Swarms. He keeps leapfrogging that out here. FanTaSy's sidestepping pretty gracefully. Again, though, no third base here for Jaedong. If Jaedong doesn't get a third base, it doesn't really matter what he's killing with Dark Swarm unless he's able to get into the natural. And, you know, it's a position where we have basically 2 fights going on. We have this outpost over here outside Jaedong's base that FanTaSy's controlling, but it's a similar thing, only smaller for Jaedong versus FanTaSy up here with the Dark Swarm. The thing is, oh my god, that's a huge misstep. You need the vessel to irradiate the Defilers, to see the lurkers, all of it. If, as I was going to say earlier, if Jaedong can stop FanTaSy from having these 2 armies merged together, it's going to be huge. But it does seem like this game is slowly going in the direction where FanTaSy is going to get that wrecking ball. We see that position fall now. They can merge together, And I think that it's going to be really tough here for Jaedong, A, to survive this attack, even with some Dark Swarm. He doesn't have a lot of defilers. And B, again, I keep saying it, but it's really the whole objective for Zerg right now. Get a third base, get an economy going so you're viable in a longer game.
Yeah, that is just such an issue for Zerg. It's all about gas, how much gas you have against Terran. And here, yeah, maybe FanTaSy can't push in for the win, but just keeping Jaedong on 2 bases is actually a win. We have about 6 minutes of gas left for Jaedong, and it's only 2 geysers. So FanTaSy is going to get more and more cost efficient. Even Dark Swarms are going to have a hard time catching him up. But Jaedong just must secure another base ASAP.
Oh my God, is this dropship full? It looks like it's going to be hit by at least one of the Scourge, but it looks like he might be able to unload this into the main. Again, you have a limited amount of Dark Swarms here. FanTaSy taking way more damage than I expected over here at the entrance.
Well, he actually doesn't have necessarily the right tools to deal with Defiler, right? Like, so far this game, we've seen a lot of Valkyries, we've seen a lot of Siege Tanks, and those will do well against Mutalisks and against Lurkers. But once Defilers are out, you really need Science Vessels, and the one vessel we saw got picked off. So there are issues about FanTaSy's position too. Here, Jaedong finally brings a drone up for that expansion. Can he completely secure it though?
Yeah, if the Marine was just a hex over to the left, I think he would have actually physically blocked the hatchery from being planted over there. But now Jaedong has started the opportunity to create a game where he can actually last a little bit longer and maybe take this. We've got the rest of the infantry over here gathered up. Now he can isolate this expansion to the center left. By the way, you never want to expand here. This is the only place he could take. This is not like the ideal location to be going for. In fact, it's a nightmare for Zerg to hold, so it's going to be a pretty treacherous mid-game here.
FanTaSy, though, he's keeping on unfathomable amounts of pressure. He's got so many units down here that if you don't have Dark Swarm, you just can't approach. So he's trying to whittle things down slowly but surely. He's got a huge supply advantage. Jaedong is holding on, but just that, right? He's got 72 supply. 70 is like the low point for Zerg. That's like where you're still alive, you won't die yet, but he's got to continue to build up.
Yeah, we see the burrowing over here. And what FanTaSy needs to do is just step back. He needs to make the Zerg do as much work as possible while not fully engaging, because the Lurkers under the Dark Swarm are effectively invincible. It looks like he's going to get vision over here. Oh my God, couldn't have been closer.
Amazing, amazing Dark Swarm right there. These Siege Tanks going to get picked off once again. Jaedong is actually like putting out an amazing game. Obviously, he had that one moment where his bottom right third base got busted, and that's why FanTaSy is so far ahead. But Jaedong has been fighting back amazingly. A great Plagues, Dark Swarms. He's picked off so many tanks, so many Science Vessels falling as well.
He's going to irradiate the next Lurker. Another Defiler comes up here. A lot of times you want these irradiates to come down on the Defiler. You just want to keep picking that off over and over again. The fact that there's a Nidus over here means I think this position can be controlled fairly well from Jaedong. So Jaedong is going to survive into a longer game, Artosis.
It does look that way, and just in the nick of time. You know, around 21, 22 minutes, we start running low on gas as Zerg. So he's got to be careful about that as we approach those minute marks. Double Dark Storm going down. He's plagued a lot of these units as well. Of course, ranged units deal no damage under these Dark Storms. So without Fire Bats, you just have to back up.
All right, he's Dark Swarmed that one Defiler. And there's a bit of a strain here. I mean, you know, I think we don't have any more than 1 or 2 Defilers out at a time, right?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, if there's no Defiler in the game for even a little bit, it's possible Terran just comes through and crushes a Zerg in this position. So anytime you see an orange cloud, remember, it's not just that Terran can't attack in there, it's that it's keeping Zerg from dying, because Terran's going to get bigger and bigger. It's 60 supply to 125 right now, Artosis.
Yeah, we are really on the brink of Jaedong being broken, right? This is right in the number where Zergs give up.
Right.
But as is, he does have that fresh gas, so Jaedong not going to give up immediately. Still throwing down these Dark Storms, still trying to just break the army enough to get out on the map.
All right, so he's going to try to get that irradiate. He does. There should be another Defiler hatching here. And really, I mean, Jaedong has no plan to win the game right now. What he needs to do is just last.
Yes.
He needs to basically weather the storm, and we don't even know how long the storm is going to go for, or if it's ever going to end, because FanTaSy is now going to get the 4th base up. Now, Zerg, funnily enough, can function off of less bases versus Terran. It is possible.
Yeah. You know, we're actually approaching that moment where we are going to be running out of gas in the main base, then shortly after the natural. So this is getting very dire. When you start running out of gas in this matchup, there's just nothing you can do as Zerg. Now, he throws out another Dark Storm. FanTaSy continuing to push forward, throwing down Irradiates, doing a fantastic job here. Jaedong, he hasn't let up on it.
No, not at all, actually. The gas is still being mined here, but I think that FanTaSy may actually abandon the contain position and just try to irradiate this. And, you know, you're eating away at the defenses over time. The more science vessels we see in a situation exactly like this, the more dire it gets for Jaedong, because you can just start to rotate irradiates over and over, and eventually you're going to have one irradiate for every defiler and every lurker, and eventually there's just nothing there to stop the infantry from breaking through.
So true. The infantry trying to break through right now. FanTaSy trying to get a finish. He may be able to do it. All 4 of those lurkers end up falling. A little counterattack from Jaedong, but he has to GG. FanTaSy going to take a game number 1, but it was hard fought.
That was a sick game, Artosis.
It was. That was a good game.
That was a real treat to cast. And, you know, Jaedong played a really good tactical game, trying to get that third base set up, trying to use those hold position lurkers, but at the end of the day, it really did come down to the fact that FanTaSy was able to outmuscle him. And FanTaSy had that weird build at the start.
Yeah.
That he didn't kill Jaedong with, but he still managed to put that kind of pressure on, to understand the ebb and the flow of the Zerg, and to get into a spot where Jaedong's third base was so delayed that Jaedong was just never able to get into any kind of a healthy position back there.
FanTaSy's reads on the game and the position of the game were amazing, but Jaedong actually, I think, used better tactics overall in this game. You know, obviously, that evolution chamber is what made it possible to hold here. The drones coming up to block the fire bats. If you get, like, that's the thing that happens. You get 2 fire bats up in the main, the Zerg can lose. And this moment, this is where Jaedong maybe got a little bit too greedy. He got the whole position lurker off, but that turned into losing the bottom right.
Yeah, I think FanTaSy probably could have ended it earlier, but the whole position was just so good here. But FanTaSy played a good control game here. And honestly, it's almost more impressive that Jaedong was even in the game for this long, all things considered. It was like such a crazy game. But that's going to be that, at least to begin this best of 5 here. That means that FanTaSy is up 1-0 versus Jaedong.
Yeah, that's a great first victory, but it doesn't seem like Jaedong is playing poorly at all, right? He was going for a very decisive move, lost his third base because of it. And honestly, I think in a lot of ways he outplayed FanTaSy after that, but FanTaSy knew exactly, like textbook, how to shut him down, just to keep his units on the map. He was losing them a little bit cost inefficiently even at times, right? The plates are doing well, the Dark Storms are doing well, but he knew that if he just denied that third base long enough, then by the time the third gets online, you're running out of gas in the main base. And suddenly you're in the same type of position where you just can't fuel enough to push out.
Okay, we're going to be going into game 2, and I got to say, Jaedong going to be a little bit tilted with that first loss there. FanTaSy, by the way, despite having not been that active before the Legends Invitational, is seeming to be the strongest player, at least for now. Over here onto our map, Circuit Breakers in the top left, in the red, the legend himself. He is Jaedong. And in the top right, in the blue, one of those who revolutionized Terran early on in StarCraft 1, he is FanTaSy.
All right, we're on Circuit Breakers. This is a pretty old map. This was definitely during their Kespa careers back in like 2007, 2008, 2009, that type of era we saw Circuit Breakers in. It is a big, big, big macro map.
Yeah, this is a very open map. It does have this sort of connecting chain through the outside edges of it. These bases that sort of ring the map and can be accessed through different channels. But the center of the map is just this like big, open, vast plain, and it's you know, it makes for a lot of different scenarios that can be created, especially in TVZ where you can try to run around each other.
Sure, absolutely. You know, there's a lot of bases on the map. There are some mineral-only bases. Those very rarely get utilized by Zerg players, but a Terran can take that. You know, a Terran can take that and really utilize that to pump out more Marines. But very likely what we'll see here is, you know, Jaedong, of course, taking his natural, FanTaSy taking his natural. But Jaedong should take probably the bottom left main base as his third. And of course, if FanTaSy somehow could deny that, that's where Jaedong gets in the same trouble as we saw in the previous game.
Now, this game, FanTaSy, unless we've got some surprises, it looks like he's not going to do anything crazy. He's going to be going for an expand build. And, you know, games where one race tries to get a base up really quickly, it does allow for the other race to try to occasionally take control of the game or play passively. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. But I don't know if Jaedong wants to do anything too crazy to start this off, right? He's already down one game in a best of 5. And so we probably will have more of an ordinary back and forth TVZ here, at least as far as tech and build goes.
Yeah. There's not that many, honestly, good cheeses for Zerg in, like, the early mid-game.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's some tricky plays you can do, like, let's say the SCV dies too quickly. But as you can see, as Jaedong was just microing right there, FanTaSy is walling in. And as soon as you see a wall in like this, it cuts down what you can do as Zerg aggressively, dramatically. Like, you see that, you can't really do a Zergling attack. I mean, you could try, but if enough Marines are standing there, you're just not going to get the surface area required. The depots are going to stop you. The Marines will shut it down. So FanTaSy is really just forcing this immediately into the mid-game.
We have occasionally seen games where Zerg will get a Hydralisk dead and try to Lurker bust, but again, it's probably not a good way to play the game, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you could kill the barracks in the depot, but if they get a bunker up in the front, you've just wasted all your Lurkers. So 99% we're going to have the Spire come down, and this is going to be one of those games where we're going to see Mutas come out to play. And it's going to be FanTaSy trying to get as many SCVs out as possible and get turrets and other defenses in the very, very last second.
Yeah, and it does look as well like he is going to do the Academy Rush. That is like the most standard opener in Terran Berserk. You can see that Academy getting started before that 4-minute mark. So basically, FanTaSy is going to make Marines and Medics move out around 5 minutes and walk across the map to just make sure Jaedong is not being too greedy.
So we've got a couple of Marines that are going to come out here and apply. I was going to say, they might just be trying to kill the Zergling they may be out there to spot or see if there's an Overlord. But
exactly,
you don't want to commit down much more than that. But you know, keeping the Zerg guessing is always key. A lot of times when you watch somebody play against the Zerg, you'll see these movements where they come out and fight and then run back and come out and fight and run back. They want the Zerg to not be completely clear on if they're being attacked or not.
Exactly.
And even a Zergling, which is basically the lowest value thing as far as resources and supply go in the game, even killing a Zergling adds up when you get players of this caliber.
Now, FanTaSy continuing to build up those Marines. Actually, a fair amount of Zerglings being hatched by Jaedong, more than I expected, but not so many that it's like a cheesy play. He may be looking, there's a couple things you can do against Academy Rush. One would be to surround the army as it comes out, because it moves out right before stim is done, so sometimes you can get a good engage there. The other would be to run around or run by those Marines and Medics and do a counterattack when they're moving out. Both of these can be very strong tactics.
So the Lings are just going to continue to try to fish out any Marines and try to get whatever intel they can. Remember, Zerglings don't have great vision, so if you can kind of get them in and then run back, the vision sort of stays for a little bit of extra time. And the infantry is going to come out. Now, he could actually sandwich this really nicely. That's exactly what we're going to have here, Artosis.
Jaedong with the surround. He gets some of those Marines up at the front. FanTaSy gets back to the bridge, and Fire Bats come out immediately, so that will shut that down for now. But you know what? Jaedong keeps this army back, and FanTaSy has to go into more of a defensive stance. So overall, yeah, that seems like it was fine by Jaedong. I think he wanted a little bit more than he got, but I don't feel like he's significantly behind for making that many Zerglings.
No, not at all. And now we have the Mutas coming out into the game here. And look, I mean, the small tactical victory that we saw earlier on there, that really hurts the Terran. I mean, everything you built up, you've, not everything, but a lot of what you built up, you've lost, right? And so it's just a little bit harder to get out onto the map and really do anything. And now we've got the Mutas continuing to roam.
Yeah, the Muta's going to put some harassment on here, trying to get those turrets that FanTaSy, of course, is trying to push back as far as he can. very different from game number 1, right? Like Jaedong shuts down the early pressure and now is able to actually do some harassment in the main base with his mutas.
Yeah, they stim once more and the mutas have to back out. The Lings are going to be set up over here with the mutas. He's just going to try to find any opening. Now, FanTaSy has been pretty good at basically not taking that much damage, and this is one of the features of him back in the day versus Zerg, is he was usually able to brush off the Zerg's harass in a pretty easy way, kind of teching what he wanted to anyways. And so what Jaedong's doing, obviously it gets value, and he kind of has to do it and has to kill something, or he's, you know, not, or the Terran is going to be further ahead here. But overall, FanTaSy is holding this quite nicely. Now, this is cool. If we can get a shot of the bottom left where the expansion is, he's not taking the main, he's taking the natural. And so the reasoning why is that Terran will scan the mains first. Say, okay, you're not in the bottom left, maybe you didn't expand it. Did you expand to the bottom right? Sometimes they'll even scan the bottom center.
Yeah.
Or something weird like that.
Could be hidden like that, that's true.
Yeah, but this is, so the base, the third base location doesn't make sense, but it's also probably not going to be found as fast.
Yeah, there's also this other aspect to it where it's easier to kill because you don't have a high ground ramp that's protecting you. But let's say you hold on to it and you get into the later game, your fourth base is free. It's like buy one, get one free type of situation because you just expand up the ramp and you already have defense at the front. So it can be very strong for the later game as well.
Yes, that's actually a very good point. If Terran doesn't punish it in time, it just gets worse here for the Terran. And so we're going to see when and if FanTaSy can actually identify that that base is down there in the bottom left. But for now, FanTaSy sticking with the Valkyries. He does like this Valkyrie style. You know, when you go straight into Mutalisks, which, by the way, is standard in TVZ, you are always going to get Lurkers later. You can't just go get Mutalisks and Lurkers at the same time. It's too much gas. And so this third gas, as that kicks in, that's really what allows you to start to tech into more than one thing. But you know, for now, we need to see how exactly is Jaedong going to handle the push coming here from FanTaSy, because we've still got this Valkyrie out. It looks like the infantry are enough. Oh my god, the Firebat does so much damage there, killing the Lings. That was insane.
Yeah, and the Valkyrie doing so much damage as well to those Mutalisks. They do have to run back. He has some Scourge out to try to catch it in case it overcommits. Oh, actually a little bit sloppy there. It clicked it before and didn't move it back. Now FanTaSy going towards the bottom left. I don't believe the Lurkers are going to be ready before the bio gets there. See, he is making a couple of sunken colonies. It is going to take a little bit for those to finish, and the Lurkers have started, but FanTaSy has some potential to deal real damage here.
Ooh, this was a tricky call. He does get that. Oh, hold on. He's actually going to commit right in. I think he can get at least the first sunk, and he's going to get the second one as well. When that other one hatches, it's going to, yeah, it's not even going to finish. I think that actually FanTaSy can kill this. Hold on. There's still a Valkyrie hitting the Mutas, so the Mutas can't actually like stay and hold their ground. It's all going to be down to the Lurkers, and the scan comes down here, and the Lurkers fall as well.
This is the problem with taking this base.
Yeah.
If you had made the Lurkers eggs on the ramp and taken the bottom left main, no way you break that, right? So this is Jaedong. He was trying to set up for a very strong late game, getting a free fourth, but now he's lost his third base. This is really similar to the last game now, where you have to look at this and give FanTaSy a big edge.
The Lings are going to come forward here, and I don't even know about this. I almost wonder if Jaedong taps out.
He might.
This just seems almost like, yeah, there it is, GG. Dude,
yeah.
This is 2-0. FanTaSy is 2-0ing Jaedong?
Jaedong's making some greedy moves, right? Like, he's not just setting up a solid defense at a solid defendable third base.
Yeah.
If you're going to expand there on the low ground, Terran has one timing where they can move in and possibly kill it, and that's exactly what happened.
It's interesting to see Jaedong elect to be sneaky when I think he could have just been straight up and solid, because FanTaSy gets down there, and you know, we were both, you know, hammering away at this point, Artosis, but you don't normally expand there because it's harder to hold.
Yeah.
But when FanTaSy realized what's happening and spotted that, he went right in there. And you can see Jaedong almost held. It was close, but at the end of the day, with the one Valkyrie surviving, the Mutas can't come in there and help defend the the Lurkers. The Lurkers don't have the backup of the sunken colonies, and so, you know, what is it, like a second and a half for Lurkers to burrow? It's enough time for all the Marines and the Firebats to kill the Lurkers. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, Game 3 of the Legends Match Finals with FanTaSy and Jaedong continues on just after this.
All right, guys, we are here at Gamers8, and I have just ambushed Zombie Grub, who is peacefully trying to enjoy her watching of the finals for the SC1 Legends tournament. And I want to get your thoughts. Kind of, I know that you are a massive Brood War fan. How are you feeling about how this event has gone so far?
The event's gone really, really well. The surprise factor of FanTaSy actually defeating Busu and now facing Jaedong in the finals means that we have a Terran versus Zerg finals, which is basically the best matchup in both StarCraft 2 and StarCraft 1. And both of these players helped to develop the meta of this matchup. So, I mean, I think it's a treat for everyone.
I know that you are one of the people who, much like me, did not necessarily come into StarCraft 2 already being a commentator and a content creator and all these other things. What's it been like for you kind of looking back at these legends of Brood War when they're kind of like even before our time?
They're absolutely before our time, because I actually didn't get into Brood War when it first was coming out. You know, I played on the N64. I don't think that counts. But I got into it after I got into StarCraft 2 because I heard that there was just so much history. So I didn't get to witness that history firsthand, just the tail end of it, really. But now I get to witness it just, you know, right on the stage almost. So I'm very excited for this.
And I'm really curious because I'm sure there's a lot of people who may even be interested in Brood War after this. How did you learn more about the history? Because you're almost like a little bit of a StarCraft historian, despite coming in after the era.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely look backwards for a lot of these things. But to get into Brood War, I mean, it's as simple as watching, I think, ASL, right? You know, you have Tastosis constantly casting, and they do a great job of breaking things down. You can see how just nerdy they are, how excited they are about Brood War. So definitely check that out. And then Team Liquid still ends up being a great resource. But honestly, just make friends in the scene, because that's how I did it. I made friends that were into StarCraft 2, but were way more into Brood War. And they kind of forced me to watch. And I was like, okay, guys, you're right. This is pretty good.
All right, last question before I get out of your face. FanTaSy or Jaedong?
Jaedong.
All right, thank you so much, Zombie Grub, and we'll catch you guys in the rest of Gamers8.
All right, we are ready now to get into our next match. Right now, this man, FanTaSy, is leading 2-0 against Jaedong. You know, again, I think that Jaedong has just been a little bit greedy. He wanted more than is safe in Game 1 and Game 2, and FanTaSy punished him both times.
Yeah, in FanTaSy, you know, he had a pretty unusual opener in Game 1 that ideally ends the game right, and if not, it's a tricky early mid-game. But he came out on top anyways, and never let Jaedong get a third until the third was so late. What are you going to do? And I don't know. You know, we went into Game 2, I should say, and Jaedong got a little sneaky with the third itself, right? He wanted to hide it. He wanted FanTaSy to guess, but FanTaSy figured it out and got there literally within a matter of seconds, pulling off the kill. And Jaedong did everything in his power to try to save that third base, and he was stopped. And so here we are. It's a best of 5. That means FanTaSy, he wins one more, and it's over. He's the champion. Otherwise, Jaedong has to do the reverse sweep 3-0.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm really hoping that Jaedong plays like a safer version of his strats, right? Like if he takes that bottom left main, 100% it holds, and we're still in that game, you know? But we'll see. We're going to get into our next map. Looks like it's going to be on Vermeer.
In the top right, in the blue, our Terran player, he is FanTaSy. And in the bottom right, in the red, our Zerg player, he is Jaedong. So Artosis, if you told me that we'd have Jaedong in the finals with our lineup, I would have thought, yeah, I guess that makes sense, right?
Yep.
FanTaSy beating Busu is surprising.
Sure.
The way that FanTaSy beat Busu is even more surprising. The fact that FanTaSy is beating Jaedong is crazy. Now that FanTaSy is up 2-0 against Jaedong, it is out of this world. I don't think anybody expected this. I don't even know if FanTaSy realized this was going to be possible. Jaedong has been in incredible shape. He's played in many ASLs. At times he looks like he might be the guy that takes the whole thing, but sometimes he loses in an upset. He's historically been the greatest Zerg that there is. FanTaSy is up there in the pantheon of all the great Terran players that we've had in StarCraft 1 and ones that have revolutionized the game. He was an accomplished StarCraft 2 pro as well. But here we are in Game 3 in this best of 5 in the finals of the Legends match, and FanTaSy is so close to the finish line. It's wild.
And he's choosing a build to try to put himself over that finish line immediately. This is a 4-8 barracks, and right now, this particular variant where you wall in your natural right behind the 8 barracks is the build. You know, in StarCraft 1, there's always a build in that kind of rock, paper, scissors formation. There's always a Protoss build that Terran players are having a hard time with, a Terran build Zerg players are having a hard time with, and a Zerg build that Protoss players are having a hard time with. And this is the exact one right now that a lot of Zerg pros don't like to face. It's this 8 racks pressure into expansion. Luckily for Jaedong, he's going to scout it immediately. He is going to look at that. He knows exactly what he's against. He plays against this a lot right now. Let's see how strong his defense is.
Even the damage on the Marine early on, getting it to 30 HP is a pretty big deal. The Marines are not going to heal organically where the drones, Zerglings, everything else will. He's going to have the Marines trickle down one by one. He's going to get the bunker set up. Just like the old days, this is a bunker rush, but this is not one where you're trying to necessarily overpower them right away. You're trying to pull the drones out, because if they don't, they will lose outright. Pick off as many drones as possible while trading out as effectively as you can.
Oh man, he only brought 4 drones. He actually gets us around and kills a Marine. That's kind of a big deal, but already 2 drones falling. 2 drones. That is a little bit painful this quickly. Brings more out, starts surrounding. Oh man, he's not gonna quite catch this one, I think. Wait, oh my god! The moving shot he does, but he loses another drone in the process.
Yeah, and so there's just 1 Marine inside this bunker. Can he intercept another one? He's starting to do a decent amount of damage. He's gonna have to pull that 1 drone away. The 2nd Marine gets inside. The Lings come up. The SCVs actually help. They repair and then damage that Ling. The repairing continues on. Oh my god.
Oh no, he's like 2 Lings short of busting all of this instantly.
Oh my god. So he's gonna be able to bust it. And I don't know where the kill count is exactly. I mean, how many drones were actually taken out back there?
I want to say 4.
Okay.
I want to say he got 4. It might have been 5, though. So a little bit painful for Jaedong. Obviously, both the SCVs died. He made a bunker that died, and all of those Marines ended up dying. He didn't overmake Zerglings. In fact, I believe he undermade by exactly 1 pair, or that would have broken a lot quicker. So I look at this game right now, and I would say that this is slightly FanTaSy advantaged.
Yeah, I think he could have gotten 1 to 2 drones more. Also, the fact that the moving shot paid off and he killed the 2nd Marine completely changes the math. There is a world where that 2nd Marine early on got in the bunker, and that when the retake, you know, from the drones, the Lings came in, the game just ends.
Yeah, those are possibilities. You know, normally you're not supposed to die to the single 8 barracks. It's more of a pressure play where you're jockeying for position a little bit. Now, FanTaSy, like the way he's following it up, this is exactly how you're supposed to do it, right? Like he's got that wall, he's making Marines, his expansion, going into an academy very, very quickly. Let's see how Jaedong likes to go about it. He's getting his 3rd hatchery. He's definitely re-droning a little bit, which is really important to get that economy back into the more functional area. He has a layer on the way. There's a decent chance that this just goes into a regular macro game, but so far today, what Jaedong has had a problem with is keeping his 3rd base.
That's right, Artosis. It's been very, very difficult for him to basically get into the state of the game where he can start to really attack. And, you know, once you get the 3rd base and especially the 4th base up, you're not defending versus the Terran anymore. Now you're actually out fighting and trying to end the game. And so it's pretty wild that, you know, of all players, FanTaSy is able to basically stop Jaedong before he can even get started here. And so let's see what exactly is going to happen in this game. I mean, FanTaSy tries to get in there and do that damage. He does a decent amount. Not so much that I would say Jaedong's going to be limping into this phase of the game, but he is getting that Spire out. FanTaSy is continuing to crank out SCVs, produce and tech up and develop. And pretty soon here, I think we can expect to see FanTaSy try to move out and start to test the waters a little bit here with the Zerg.
Sure, yeah, I mean, you want to push out. You want to make sure that Zerg is not being too greedy, right? Like a big part of playing against Zerg in StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2 is making sure that they're not making too many drones. And here you can see as soon as the move out occurs, FanTaSy turns around, because he knows that's all he has to do. When Jaedong sees that coming, he just simply must make 1 to 2 sunken colonies. You can see, makes 1, cancels the other.
Right.
Okay, this is what this move out was for.
So the Lings are going to come out once more. The Overlord here is just observing when the movement's going to come in and out. He hasn't sent anything over there to try to see that yet. I like the dive. Only gets 1 Ling while burning his stim on all those infantry units. 3 Raxes are set up. And, you know, where it's going to be a little bit more downtime, I think. Basically, with the Spire finishing, and look at the perfect scan. He's going to see that Spire is about to be done. We're going to have 9 mutas, maybe up to 11 here to harass. And as that starts up, we want to see that drone come out on the map and stake out. There it is, actually, even sooner than I thought. And it looks like this is probably going to be an expansion at the bottom left. I don't think we're going to see Jaedong try to take a natural and hide.
Yeah.
Like the natural expansion of a base and try to hide that third base because of how badly it backfired in game 2.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. At this point, Jaedong is going to have to play a bit more textbook. There's no other way. You don't want to just lose instantly to FanTaSy busting your third base. So he is going to go ahead and expand into the more safe location. He actually told it to. There you go. He's going to be able to get it started. His mute is going across the map, but the turrets should be just about ready. Ooh, a nice catch there. No vision for Jaedong, so accidentally flies into the Marines. But he will start kind of dogging this Marine medic force.
Yeah, he's going to force the Terran to be extremely attentive with this infantry here. The Lings are going to run around. He might actually dive in and try to kill the turret even. I don't see any, I don't see anything over here. He's actually going to come up into the main. FanTaSy has a decent amount prepared here, but you know, mutas and Lings together, it's tough. The Marines, sometimes they don't pair very well. And then you get a situation like this where you trade out really nicely. The last Ling kills the last Marine, but headed southbound is this infantry squad, this big group of units that's coming down. I see 1 sunk and 2 more morphine. A scan, I think, should tell FanTaSy it would be unwise to commit.
Yeah, as a third sunken finishes, you definitely can't attack. His timing for this is pretty much evaporating at this point, which will allow Jaedong. Well, it looks like he wants to do it right before that third sunken is ready. Against 2, you definitely can bust. The Ling's coming out. The third should be finishing in a moment, but he might kill the first one before it finishes. Oh man, Jaedong has to bring his mutas home.
Yeah, kind of a dicey move from FanTaSy, but it does change the flow of the game here, right? Those Lings and mutas could have done a lot of damage, but because he sacrificed these units onto the sunk and threatened a lot of damage, everything has to come back and respect that. We got to get a shot of what exactly has been made back at home for FanTaSy. He's got a decent amount of infantry.
Yeah, it looks like he is going for a siege tank, and yeah, a Valkyrie with that. He really loves builds like this.
He loves this build. Regardless of the way the game develops at the start, this is where he wants to take it. So I don't think this will be a game where it comes down to a fight over the third base. This is going to be a game where Terran is trying to push the natural down here, the Zerg, using the Valkyries to basically protect the tank and the infantry and make it impossible for mutas to engage. Was that a Queen's Nest in the main, by the way? Is that what I saw? Or yes, it is.
Yes. Well, we'll see what he does with the Queen's Nest. If he's going to get lurkers with that, it could be a Guardian Rush. But when your opponent is already fielding Valkyries, sometimes that can be it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. But like against a siege tank-based composition, it can work.
Oh, he cancels the would-be sunken colony. The creep tumor is gone. Jaedong supply block, by the way. It could not have been a worse time. Oh my God, the Valkyrie! You know, those extra hits, it's huge. Yeah. Every little missile that hits, like that muta has 6 HP. Well, he's gonna have to commit down here. The next Valkyrie's coming out. It's funny, FanTaSy likes Valkyrie builds, but he seems to be a little bit greedy with how much Valkyrie damage he wants to pull off here.
That's true.
But I guess he knows every extra shot that he gets allows that second where the Marine stim to just snowball the fight.
Well, he comes down to the front. You can see this spread of sunken colonies. This is the way you want to do it. You want to stifle them against tanks. Try to force as many siege and unsieges as is possible. But FanTaSy going to get to work immediately on one of these sunkens. The Defilers are too far out right now, right? He's hit a good timing. The Defilers are going to be late. So Jaedong has to engage this, and he has to kill everything.
Oh, he lost the Valkyrie.
Ooh,
he actually had the Scourge underneath the mutas there.
You know what? This could be a very good Guardian situation, actually.
Yeah.
What you were saying before, maybe it wasn't before he killed a couple Valkyries, but now I could see that being a good move.
How many? There's 6 mutas here. There's more Marines coming down. There's a Scourge. Oh my gosh, he actually has the Valkyrie through here. Somehow the Scourge weren't able to intercept that. He's got to be careful. Once again, it seems like the Valkyrie's going to but the Valkyrie 360 no-scopes the Scourge.
Yeah, but you know what? The Mutas actually go up and kill the rest of those Marines that were coming in. So, you know, he is whittling this down a little bit. If we could check the main 4 tech for Jaedong right now, that would be great.
So we've got the tanks coming down now. The stim is just continuing to hit this. These Mutas are getting so low on HP. And the Lurker's going to come forward, but... Oh, hold on, there's more Lurkers coming on this side. Does he have a scan? He does.
Oh man, that scan very, very important for these Siege tanks. There's so few Marines left. He's trying to box them in. The Ling's coming up and are going to be able to delete these Marines. It looks like he will finally break through this push.
Yeah, he shuts that down pretty nicely. But the Muta count was reset. It's Lurkerling. You can fight Lurkerling with a Marine tank. It really comes down to finesse and control. The Hive has started here, so he's going to try to get into that Defiler tech. We see as the game is no longer about Mutas, instead it's going to be about FanTaSy trying to move down here to the bottom left. Now, anytime you see, we saw a dropship, by the way, headed out to the south here. Anytime you see Valkyries being made, it means science vessels are going to be a lot later.
That's right, which can make Defilers incredibly strong. Now, he burrows a couple Lurkers up here. He's going to be able to move them back against that scan and siege. He's got to buy time and save that base.
Oh my God!
Beautiful.
He gets the dropship. Jaedong's perfectly ready.
1 supply for 10. Let's go. Jaedong having some good defenses so far this game. One thing to mention is once Hive Tech is out, Marine Medic Siege Tank is no longer a good composition. Just about everything in Hive counters Siege Tanks.
Right.
So, you know, we're going to see if he actually can get up to there, but against this layer tech that we still see fielded from Jaedong, it is a little bit tough.
That's right. The Defilers... hold on a second. We've got, okay, there we go. He's going to be able to come in here with these Lurkers. I think he was able to get a couple of drones. Getting the drones is not bad, by the way. Keep in mind, Zerg don't ever get that many drones in the game, so when you kill one, it's pretty big. I think FanTaSy's screen isn't even over this right now. He's probably back to macroing and producing somewhere else. We've got one more push coming through here, although this push looks, actually the unit comp doesn't even really make sense. No medics there.
Well, this is FanTaSy just trying to keep pressure on, and it's starting to really not work. Jaedong has his feet under him. He's only down by 10, 12 supply right now, and his tech is very good.
That's right. And I think from here, the opportunities for Terran to end the game are gone.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless we see a real slip up here. It looks like with the one remaining tank he has, he's going to try to come out and get something done. But once the consume upgrade gets done, and we see it is done, and he can gobble up these Zerglings, he's going to have endless mana to make Dark Swarm, which is going to make a push impossible.
This is where we need to see FanTaSy switch it up. He can't be making Valkyries anymore. He really should be going into Science Vessels. We do see a Science Vessel there. But, like, you need to really switch into Vessels. They're going to be incredibly important to go forward if you're going to continue with Marine Medic.
So we have a Radiate being upgraded here. The Lurkers come in. A little bit of an overextension here, but Jaedong always quick to blanket that area with another Dark Swarm. FanTaSy's going to do a run-by. This is not to kill the third base, but to basically occupy the entrance. When the push phase of the game is done, you have this more contained phase where Terran wants to have Zerg putting Dark Swarm outside of their naturals, defending against the Medic Marine, instead of Dark Swarms in their naturals, the Terran's natural, that is, killing off their base. Because one Dark Swarm around the command center of the second base that Terran has in the game ends. So this is all Terran setting up the sandbag progress the Zerg could make.
Exactly. And not just that, that little group we saw at the bottom left, that's to deny the fourth base of Jaedong, just to slow it down. Make him use spells, make him use time and effort to take that fourth. Now, Jaedong is actually pushing. He is extremely close to where FanTaSy decided to take his third base. A great plague goes down, going to suck all the energy out of those medics. And you know what? Like, maybe there's a chance here for Jaedong to push up and deny the third.
We've got two drop ships over here headed to the south. This is one way to play where if the Zerg is not ready to brace for impact and deal with this, you can just lose control of the game. But it's also highly risky because Scourge can just kill the dropships off and Terran loses so much supply and momentum. So far, okay, he's gonna go right through here. I don't see any lurkers, Artos.
Two big moves. There's lurkers up at the third base of FanTaSy, but FanTaSy doing a double medevac, or double dropship here at the main base of Jaedong. Not much in there, so he's going to start losing some tech, unfortunately.
Some Dark Swarms come down. Oh my gosh, he gets both dropships. It buys a little bit of time. I think, meanwhile, we do have science vessels irradiating at the natural. Oh, he's doing the eraser.
Oh, it gets picked off, though. The Plague plus Hydra killing off that vessel. And it looks like the Dark Storms have mostly cleared the main base. Jaedong, for whatever reason, unburrowed up there at the third, but he is denying mining for FanTaSy.
Now, even having those 3 Marines alive in the main is a headache. That's one thing about Terran infantry is if you don't have enough to strong-arm them, suddenly the damage starts to stack. Now, Jaedong's gonna have to run to this corner and basically try to trade out as well as he can. FanTaSy, if he controls this right, can get, okay, he did a really good job of controlling that. So I was gonna say, sometimes, you know, you can really win in a moment like that where it can go either way, but that was a decent trade for Jaedong. FanTaSy's still gonna have enough to be functional. And it's a 3-base to 3-base game. FanTaSy is not wavering. He's actually got a lot of supply.
Yeah.
Zerg really is still pretty low.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild to see this game where, you know, Jaedong, who's been so established and active, by the way, in StarCraft 1, is really being mostly overpowered in this best of 3 by FanTaSy.
He is. But now Jaedong is going to throw down the Dark Storm at that containment force and push out in order to take his 4th base. You know, when you're playing Marines and Medics against Zerg, that 4th gas is the most crucial thing that can happen. Most games are kind of normal like this, where it's 3 base and then Terran takes a 3rd. But when Zerg gets that 4th base up, that 4th gas, they really can start fielding an army that can truly battle against what Terran has.
Notice that the Zerg is stacking lurkers on top of each other. It creates ambiguity as far as what you see. That could look like 1 lurker. It's actually 3. But it could be even more than that, you know, and so it makes it undesirable to come in there and hit. It's also harder to irradiate stack.
Yeah, you can only irradiate 1 at a time.
Right.
It really buys a lot of time for Zerg. Now, here comes in a double drop once again. You have to clear this really efficiently. He gets the Darkstorm down quickly. Gonna go ahead and burrow a couple lurkers under there. Ling's here to meet as well. Uh-oh, Firebat's getting into that mineral line. Oh, the Defense Matrix Firebats with a great move at that 4th base natural.
Oh my god, he might be able to win the game right here. The Defense Matrix Firebats busted the entrance. It looked like the main was gonna be handled, but here we go. The Terran spills up the ramp. There are no lurkers at the bottleneck to defend.
And look at that, he also gets rid of that Ultralisk Cavern. It looks like he knows what Jaedong wants to do next, but killing the 4th base, killing the Ultralisk Cavern, really putting Jaedong behind.
Another Nidus Canal is being made. They do produce extremely quickly. There's more reinforcements coming down. If the Nidus network can finish, he should be able to reinforce it. But there's another push actually happening down over here in the bottom right. Oh my god. There's lurkers actually intercepting this, but they're not perfectly placed, Artosis.
No, but there has been a good plague there, so he's going to be able to knock out this group of bio very, very quickly indeed. Trying to pick off some of these vessels as well. Vessel kills very important for Zerg to keep those irradiates low. Jaedong right now completely focused as FanTaSy pulls off the eraser.
Yeah, this is sick. Notice how Jaedong's trying to spread this out. He just wants to make these vessels do as much heavy lifting as possible in order to kill the drones, and honestly, not that many drones are being picked off. Meanwhile, a big counterattack over here from Jaedong with the SCVs.
Oh, and with a drop in the main base of Jaedong at the same time, the Firebat's doing massive damage as well. Both players hurting each other immensely. Look at the supply of FanTaSy. It has dropped dramatically. In fact, their supply's pretty close to even right now.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, Artosis. We've got another big wave, and by the way, the hold position lurkers have been cleaned up, but there's a counterattack that could happen up here in the natural.
Ooh, he sets up those lurkers. He's got a lot of energy on this Defiler. Going to try to get some Dark Storms down. Does get one in the front. Ooh, all the way up into the natural. Going to move forward with these lurkers.
He's going to be right up where the command center is. And Terran is mined out in the natural, by the way.
He's not mining anything.
He's not mining anything right now. Yeah, that's right. FanTaSy's minerals are basically frozen right now.
Now FanTaSy going for a counterattack. This is a great move, especially with the fire bats. Plague goes down. Oh, he targets down every single Scourge, even a building coming in to spot what's coming for FanTaSy's army. Now the Lurkers burrowing, actually doing a great job splitting some of these Marines apart.
Yeah, the drones are being gunned down one by one. The Lurker leaps forward here and begins to clean up this infantry. And now, I actually think FanTaSy might be dead. He's got a big army, but he doesn't actually have any income.
Look at that, a great plague upon all those medics and the few Marines that were there with them. Yeah, the Burning Command Center still floating. The SCV's stuck. He did take a new base over here at 12 o'clock. So if he can get that fully up and mining, the production of FanTaSy can start again. But look, he's been sitting at 39 minerals for a long time. He's got almost nothing going on.
That's right. He's in some hot water here.
One Lurker at that base.
I don't think there's enough infantry here for FanTaSy. I think he basically lost everything that he had. I think the Zerg can just make a couple more Lurkers and Zerglings and basically win the game.
I think you're right.
It looked for a little bit like Jaedong was going to fall, but he was able to stabilize. And from there, I mean, we have SCVs just now transferred. Maybe FanTaSy can muster up enough, but right now this is the most vulnerable FanTaSy has been this entire game.
Well, the Vessel's coming forward, trying to get some Irradiates down. He's really got to make the most out of this group of units. The Vessels will be very cost efficient. We'll see if he can irradiate every high-quality unit, but FanTaSy just now started mining again. So he's down 20 supply right now, but if he can keep these two bases up and mining and get back on that two-base economy, he can refill his supply pretty quickly.
Dude, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
He literally had no income for, I think, about 2 minutes.
Yeah, you're right about that. And one thing to mention about Jaedong, though, is we're getting to the point where the geysers are running out. The main geyser should be empty just about now. The natural very soon thereafter. So when Jaedong's bank of gas is gone, he's going to have a hard time going forward with high-quality unit production.
Kind of a weird moment to see the Hydralisk irradiated. You can just make that into an egg and it'll outlast the irradiate.
Yeah.
Now, when you're roaming this deep, some small number of Lings can counterattack and do a lot of damage. We've got some reinforcements here. 3-3, by the way, for the infantry. So you don't get much stronger. Well, you literally can't get stronger than this.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy upgrades, really. It makes it very hard for Zerg to continue to engage. Jaedong's upgrade's good as well, though. He does have +2 carapace and +2 melee attack, so pretty darn solid. The Vessels, though, are causing a real problem here because, you know, right now we're on 2.25 gas for Jaedong. You know, when you run out of a geyser in StarCraft 1, you get 2 gas instead of 8. It doesn't just die completely like in StarCraft 2.
Right.
So he has just over 2 base gas, and you're not able to make as many Lurkers and, you know, like Defilers off of that. So you go more Zergling heavy, but unfortunately 2/2 Lings against 3/3 Bio is not a great matchup.
That's right. Terran just trying to eke out as much damage as he can here with this infantry. Stim, kill, run away, rinse, repeat. Or lose all your stuff, FanTaSy. But you get the idea. By the way, the fourth base is going to be denied again here. He's going to keep irradiating this. We do have an alternative 4th base being thrown down just outside the Zerg's main. This is not a good spot, but right now you need anything.
Well, yeah, if he can get that up and secure it, okay, we have ourselves a game again. But right now, FanTaSy has kept those 2 bases up mining long enough. He's really refilled a lot of his supply. Jaedong is picking off some Vessels here and there. He is picking off some Bio here and there. It's just, you can see now his gas was at 900, now it's at 150. And he's not going to bank anymore. He's going to be spending every cent of gas that he has.
So he's surrounded this set of Lurkers here. That is really good, by the way. It looks funny, but it's very deliberate. The eBay has no function other than to let you make turrets later on. You might as well move it through the map. It can end up baiting Scourge into hitting it, which is totally cost inefficient.
Yeah, and you never need a turret at this point ever for the rest of the game.
Right, yeah.
Just, you never make them after the Mutalisks.
Maybe like one by an expansion or whatever, you know what I mean? I don't even know, I guess to spot a Lurker or something, but really, yeah, it's useless. So instead, send it out. They both move by each other, and this could really destabilize the game for both sides.
Yeah.
Here. I don't think the Terran has enough to defend the 4th. Luckily, he's on 2 bases.
Yeah, you throw Darkstorm down here, this base is done, at least for the time that a Darkstorm takes to go away, right? So denies that base. He has been hitting some decent plagues as well. That's going to be a big part of this, right? You can just eat your Zerglings with the Defiler and plague everything over and over to try to make up for that upgrade deficit.
Well, now Jaedong is taking a lot of bases at the bottom. And this has been a real back and forth. Oh man, huge drop over here inside of the natural. There's a lot of links coming out. There might just be enough infantry to keep answering it. Where's a Dark Swarm? I don't see a Defiler.
That one Firebat making all world of difference here. Doing a great, fantastic job. Does go up into the Lings, unfortunately for him. So the Lings may actually be able to kill these Marines as they did walk so far forward. But this drop, I mean, it has killed more than its weight in Zerglings.
Hold on a second. There's a huge push in over here. This is killing so much, but again, one Dark Swarm saves the day, and FanTaSy is back to not mining.
This is an insane game between these two. Really hard to say how it's going to end. Both sides getting very, very low in supply right now. That natural hatchery is going to go down, but that gas is depleted, so it's not the biggest deal. Jaedong has 3 new bases that have hatched, but no drones really mining from them.
Yeah, I think we're going to see FanTaSy tap out here. I don't think there's any way that he can actually recover. He's going to come in here and try to just hiccup the mining. This is pretty smart because Jaedong has like literally 100 minerals right now. This is, I think, literally almost all the drones in the game. There might be a bit of transfer over here to one of the naturals, but
I feel like this is the type of game where both players may be thinking about leaving.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I think you might be right.
You should be as stubborn as possible in this position from both sides, because really both of them can still win. But Jaedong gets this base up and mining. He has 2 other new bases with no drones at them, but the vessels can be so efficient here. Occasionally you can just fly around and irradiate everything.
Yeah, I think, now, does he know about that base, I wonder? I'm not so sure.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, I feel like if he knew about that, he would have just beelined his vessels right down there and done the eraser on that as well.
Well, more Scourge are coming out. Those are to prevent that. He knows that the vessels are absolutely key for FanTaSy to have a chance to win this game. Look at this, 50 supply against 60 supply. Absurd.
This is crazy how scrappy this is.
Well, right now, FanTaSy has relanded both command centers. He's cleaned up those areas. Jaedong has caught up in those upgrades. He does have a little bit of map control right now, but the vessels are still incredibly scary.
Yeah. And now we're seeing the drones trickle out to the other bases. I don't know if there have been scans on these fresh bases, but you know, for the time being, workers are going to continue to mine here. The 2 command centers are back up. I can't believe we've been in a game where 2 times Artosis, 2 times FanTaSy has just literally not been mining for over a minute, and yet he's able to recover.
Yeah, well, especially considering we're nearing 30 minutes. For a Terran versus Zerg, this is extremely long. Normally, the game gets figured out in the first 25. So we're really getting into this crazy late game, but the economies are so small, the supplies are so small. Look at this, FanTaSy trying to get those irradiates, and he is going to lose 3 vessels with super high energy. What a move by Jaedong.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, vessels are, you know, really one of the best things Terran can keep in a long game, because you have so much value by irradiating over and over and over, and so to drop that in a moment like this is huge. That being said, FanTaSy continues to nibble away at these mineral patches, but Jaedong is on 4 functional bases if you count the bottom left main as well. So I mean, I do feel like the trajectory here for both players is one where Jaedong should just be way ahead in the next couple minutes.
Yeah, he will pull ahead. I think you're right about that. As these gases kick in, he's going to be able to refill his supply with non-Zergling units, which is what he wants. You know, at this point, he's got enough gas that he can actually go Ultralisk Defiler, and that is the ultimate end game against Terran. If you have Ultralisk Defiler, like, Terran doesn't have a great answer for that. You're plaguing everything, you're throwing down Dark Swarms, and Firebats simply can't fight against Ultras.
Yeah, Firebats will do damage under Dark Swarm, but they're such inferior units, there's not really a point in even trying to do it.
Yeah, the concussive damage against that much armor does literally like 1 damage.
Yeah, it's like hilarious.
Yeah.
Double dropship again, but it's spotted. Oh my gosh, why is there an Overlord up there? How long this game's gone on?
Because Jaedong is a legend, that's why.
Yeah, well, it's a good spot. I mean, it's probably up there to see stuff just like that. Now he's going to push down here. This is to bait out Dark Swarms. He knows that he can't probably get too deep in here, but I think the idea is pretty good.
Yeah, those Marines and Firebats will be picked off. They do a decent job, though. You know, FanTaSy does have some income again, so they're both rising up towards 100 supply once again here.
This is one of the craziest TVZs ever, Artosis.
It is a wild Terran Berserk. But right now, again, either player could win this still. They've both done so much damage to each other. FanTaSy, I think, is starting to gain some confidence here. He's attacking down into the natural, but I don't think he realizes how much gas Jaedong has access to.
I think you're right. I think he thinks he might have 1 or 2 more bases when in reality, Jaedong has a ridiculous... And by the way, when you start to see this many Ultras hatch, that's when you go, oh, he must have way more than I thought. He's going to be on 4 functional gases.
Oh, man, but look at this counterattack. Tasteless! FanTaSy getting into this base, going to be able to shut it down. He's going to kill this hatchery so quickly.
Yeah, there's no way to save this. It goes down as the Lynx hatch. The Firebats trade out very nicely. Oh my god, this one Firebat's going to kill every Ling there is.
Yeah, just about. Look at that. And Plague goes down as well as a Dark Storm. The single Ultralisk may be able to shut down this base. Irradiate's being cast, and Irradiate alone won't kill a full health Ultra, so sometimes it even helps them to deal damage. This one getting into this 3rd base location.
This is a weird moment. He's going to get up here as well. I didn't realize how brittle the defenses were in the bottom left. We weren't really paying attention to it, and I guess neither was Jaedong. A lot more drones are going to fall. Ultras have denied mining at 12 o'clock.
A lot of Lings pop out. He's going to save this base. FanTaSy is mining from his 3rd base still. That might be the next stop for Jaedong.
And so, the Scourge are out now. Again, I feel like Jaedong has been so close to killing FanTaSy, but FanTaSy's like this cockroach that's just so hard to take out. Now, it's still the 2 bases at the bottom that I don't think are very easy to sneak into here for Terran. Yeah. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to get them with the dropships that he had earlier on.
We don't have a lot left for FanTaSy.
That's right.
Like, he's got 5 vessels, some random bio sitting around. But Jaedong at this point, yeah, another great pickoff. Jaedong at this point, I think if he gathers his Ultras and just hits the 3rd base, I think we're going to have to see a GG out of FanTaSy. I think Jaedong has gotten himself into enough of a winning position. All you have to do is bring everything together. And look, he is starting to do that. You can see all of his Ultras and Lings from all corners of the map, kind of congregating, getting ready for what should be the final attack.
Yeah, no, I think we're about to see the killing blow come in here. And it was really incredible, by the way, to see FanTaSy come down into the bottom left and get those kills, but it's too late. It's too little too late. The number of Ultras that are out here, there's no way to micro against this. There's no way to have the right spells to deal with it. I think that basically FanTaSy is going to be hit from Jaedong, who's going to attack here from the south into the north, and FanTaSy's going to be flattened from there. It's going to be GG, and we're going to be going into the next game.
I think you can literally attack anywhere, the main or one of the bases, and it'll just destroy too much. Here we go into 12 o'clock. Of course, the command center flies instantly. The SCVs get picked off. Now Jaedong just has to do his rounds.
Yeah, and you know, there's a nice drop over here. Again, FanTaSy really showing how crafty he is. You can irradiate this, but don't forget, if these Ultras start to fight Marines, the irradiate actually hurts the Marines as well.
And Jaedong loses this base. FanTaSy, if he can somehow kill this entire army, maybe there is a way to victory.
Yeah, so he's taken out another base. FanTaSy, though, so high in supply, and I think the Ultras are just, there's just too many.
Well, it's hard to attack into the barracks because the Ultras don't fit anywhere.
Right.
So you can actually hold position your Marines like exactly where FanTaSy has them, and the Ultras can't do much. So Jaedong actually being pushed out once again. It's time to clear out the 3rd. You stop the mining of your opponent, and you've got this.
Yeah, not to mention each of these mineral patches doesn't amount to even 400 minerals total, right? So I think you can go back, you can clean up whatever's left, but we're starting to see FanTaSy truly fizzle out. I mean, there's just not that much more left. FanTaSy, though, he is a fighter. He knows he wants to be the legend of Gamers8. He's already up 2-0. It looks like the writing's on the wall, though, and Jaedong is at least going to start that comeback here, winning game number 3.
Yeah, and what a game. A truly, truly epic game out of these two players. And, you know, I think Jaedong has shown that those first 2 games, you know, he was a little bit greedy with what he was trying to do. He's trying to get too far ahead. Whereas here, he tried to play a more even game, a safer game in a lot of ways. And you can see that they're really well evenly matched in that type of game.
Yeah, there's just not enough vessels out here. The Scourge, go ahead and take care of that. Terran's basically going to have one last hurrah. One last push down here. Let's see what he can do, but I think that literally, even without Dark Swarm, there's no way that Terran lives.
Yeah. Losing his last few units here, his last few mineral patches being mined. He has re-landed the command center up at 12 o'clock, so he's getting some income once again. FanTaSy just not giving up. You know, this is actually a known thing called the FanTaSy GG timing.
Yeah, yeah. Where he's just going to stay in the game and keep fighting no matter what. And, I mean, you can kind of see why he's able to wear so many other players down here. The counterattack's going to come in here. We're going to have even more SCVs killed. We have 35 supply here. Every unit you see is 1 supply, by the way. There are 35 units here in the game, maybe a vessel or 2 around that each cost 2 supply. But this is basically it.
FanTaSy still putting in that full effort right now. GG is finally called, and Jaedong gets himself on the board.
Yeah, Jaedong starts it. The question is, can he finish it? FanTaSy sweating right now. I mean, that was a crazy TVZ we got there. I'll tell you what, the round of 4 matches were a little bit lackluster. The finals have been insane.
Yeah.
We're going to be going into match number 4 here to see if Jaedong can continue this reversal or if FanTaSy's going to close it out.
You know, that game, definitely a tiring one for both of them. Like, you really have to use your brain in these situations. It's not every day you get games where they go up, you know, into the over 100 supply, then drop down into like 40 supply, and then just seesaw back and forth. A crazy opener, of course. I almost forgot it started.
Yeah.
With all these pushes from FanTaSy, dealing massive amounts of damage, but Jaedong really knew how to deal with everything.
Yeah, Jaedong shut down so many drops, but even without that, I mean, the fact that FanTaSy did so much here. There was a period where it looked like Jaedong was about to die, and then it looked like FanTaSy literally couldn't mine resources twice in periods that went for minutes.
Yeah.
And then recovered. But the moment that we saw Jaedong secure 3 bases in the bottom, it was too many for FanTaSy to deal with.
Yeah, yeah. That was really a great move from him. I actually didn't even realize it was happening, but even when his back was up against the wall and he was almost dead, he threw down 3 expands to make sure that he could have at least a couple mining, and it worked out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so it's going to come down now to game 4 to see if we can get that final 5th game. Again, FanTaSy looking very, very tough and very, very good at denying Zerg from getting anywhere close to their turn in the game, the moment that Zerg really get to be in the offense. Will Jaedong maybe do some kind of a crazy cheese or an all-in? Does FanTaSy have any other kind of weird alternative builds? He's known for having a very big range and a lot of times having builds that are very unique to him and that nobody else can really pull off.
Yeah, that's very true. And you can see his style really coming through as well, utilizing Valkyries very, very heavily early on. That is actually something, after seeing that 3 games in a row, I wouldn't mind if Jaedong does almost a fake Mutalisk build, where you open Muta, but you aim for 8-minute lurkers. If you try something like that and your opponent doesn't have the detection, it really slows them down.
All right, we're ready to go into our game at number 4. In the center left, in the blue, our Terran player. He is FanTaSy. And his opponent here in the center right, in the red, he is Jaedong.
All right, game 4. It's on Heartbreak Ridge. It's an older map, but actually still a pretty good map. We actually see it used a fair amount. I think there's a very high likelihood that we will see from FanTaSy once again an attempt at something like a siege tank timing attack.
I think so.
With Valkyries. It's good for a map like this as well, because very oftentimes on Heartbreak Ridge, we see Zerg players focus on heavy sunken defense because of the layout of the bases, and oftentimes, into very fast Ultralisks.
One other feature of this map is the fact that the main is huge, and so it's not easy to defend with Mutalisks with turrets alone. You can also drop the main as the Terran. There's a lot of spots to come in there. So, you know, growth is hard, and growth always matters first for Zerg in the matchup. And so, you know, with FanTaSy already showing some of the best early game into mid game that I think we've ever seen in TVZ, it's going to be a tough round here for Jaedong.
He has played some masterful early and mid games. There's no question about that. Well, the drone from Jaedong comes up and starts getting some scouting going, just doing some light harassment. You know, the worker back and forth in StarCraft 1, if you're a StarCraft 2 fan that's watching right now, it's really different. The drones and probes actually can shoot from a further range than the SCVs. So that's what Jaedong was attempting there, but FanTaSy's micro was extremely fast. He was able to parry that drone very quickly.
That's right. He almost actually lost the drone. Yeah. FanTaSy's control is pretty shockingly good. You could see that Jaedong's looking to try to make some dives come in here and basically keep this SCV from actually making anything for a little bit longer, but it almost looked like it was going to go the other way, and he's actually going to come in here and try to hit this SCV. Everything pretty well timed out here from FanTaSy, but it's fun to see these mini games pan out in the game of Brood War. Back at home for Jaedong, he has got his second hatchery on the way, getting the spawning pool and the extractor, so everything looking very normal.
Yeah, I like that from Jaedong as well. He was trying to confirm whether or not we were going to see a command center. He didn't want something like the build that we saw in game number 1 to occur again. And FanTaSy gets the fastest command center you ever really see in the matchup, you know, going for it after a single supply depot. Of course, he has a wall, so he's not really going to be afraid of Zerglings or anything like that from Jaedong. And we'll have to see where Jaedong wants to bring this game. Obviously a very quick layer, but is it the standard Mutalisk opener?
That's the big question, right? Is it going to be Jaedong trying to go toe-to-toe in a normal game? Which he doesn't have to, right? I mean, there are cheeses you can do. It's going to be very hard to tell. I think only time will be able to tell what exactly Jaedong wants to do. FanTaSy, by the way, I didn't really expect him to be so robust in the early game against Jaedong. I mean, we already saw what Jaedong was basically able to do to Stork, and you know, basically he just picked Stork apart piece by piece to the point where Stork fell apart before the Protoss was able to even get to the phase of the game where it's their turn to try to attack and push and get things done on the map.
Right now, Jaedong getting some lings out to kill off this SCV, which is nice, but the SCV actually got a lot of information while it was in there. The layer was actually about 8-9 seconds later than it normally is with this type of build from Jaedong. That may have to do with the amount of micro he was putting in with the drone across the map. But that's going to make FanTaSy very, very comfortable with his Marine Medic push out.
Right. So we've got that third hatchery. Actually, a pretty common spot for that third hatch is to put it up there. Yeah. It grants some vision and gives you some access to drops that could go on up there later on in the game.
Yeah, it also kind of, it's slightly hidden, so you have to spend a whole different scan to see if there's anything there. And of course, if there is something crazy like vultures coming in, it's helpful, right? It's not going to happen here, though.
And so back here, you know, at the Terran's base, he's just continuing to make Marines, get the medics out. He is hiding a couple Marines in the back to kind of obfuscate the fact that there is a second barracks. So he's showing exactly the right number of Marines for just the first barracks there. The rally point from where the second barracks is very, very intentional.
Yeah, what he's trying to do here, very likely, is bust like a simply two sunken defense. Right. Like he actually has slightly more Marines than you normally have with this push out. And even small changes in numbers, of course, make a big difference. So that's 10 Marines, 2 medics, whereas normally it's going to be 8 Marines and 2 medics.
3 SCVs come out here. This should cause the Firebat to try to help defend.
This is a great counterattack from Jaedong, getting a couple SCVs, even a third SCV going to go down there, plus keeping those Firebats at home. In the meantime, I believe he's making 3 Sunkens, which is exactly correct here. And wow, perfect play from Jaedong.
The FanTaSy turns around. He realizes he lost the timing. It's hard to move the infantry across the map, set up for the bust, and also keep track of 3 Zerglings, you know, that are running around and targeting certain units. It's very hard to catch anything like that. Now the Spire's done. And so we're going to have the Mutalisks come out into the game. The turrets may have been delayed. So FanTaSy's set up, he just abandons it. He's not necessarily at a disadvantage, but he can't try the timing attack out that he was hoping to map onto the game. And so the game goes on. The mutas are going to come, and it's going to be the Zerg's turn to be on the offense. And not like just with 3 Lings offense, but with real threats from actual mutas that are going to be able to do a lot of damage.
That's right. FanTaSy walking out, looking to maybe catch a muta. Jaedong won't let that happen again, though. Flies right around where that Bioforce is. Going to start diving into the main base to look for damage. FanTaSy, by the way, once again with just the 2 barracks into a very, very fast starport. So quite likely he's rushing into Valkyries here once again.
Okay, the mutas have come back out. And, you know, FanTaSy's been always good at basically dealing with this, but let's see how this one goes this time around. He dives on the first turret, and the turret's not going to be, it is picked off in the last swoop in here. He's going to try to come through the bottom now, basically force the Marine system again and try to meet him somewhere else. Anytime he finds isolated Marines, he's going to take them head on.
Beautiful harassment here from Jaedong. A very decisive dive. He's slowing down the armory and the starport immensely, killing a lot of SCVs as well. I have to say, I like Jaedong's position here, and I believe he saw no +1 being upgraded in the engineering bay. Okay, it gets started now, but when he flew over, it's something like that. If you see no +1, either your opponent is being a little bit sloppy, or maybe there could be a mech switch coming up.
That's a good point. Something tells me he might suspect it's just him being slowed down, but obviously he's going to be happy with that no matter what, right?
Yeah.
More Lings and mutas are going to be coming out on the map. FanTaSy having a very hard time trying to be in control of this game. I guess this is a scouting fire bat here, maybe to try to find the hatchery that should be up there, but is not there just yet. Meanwhile, a big attack in over here with the Lings. The Lings can target down the turrets while the mutas do damage elsewhere, and FanTaSy is on the ropes.
Yeah, he's actually dealing a good amount of damage. Those Lings didn't do as well as I think he wanted, but he's slowing down the starport once again. They got rid of a turret, so he's killing more SCVs over here. This is a lot of damage, Tasteless.
Yeah, and you know, he's taking full advantage of the fact that this is an odd high ground area. The Marines have to move up, and he can basically force them into a single file line and then pelt them down with the mutas and the glaive damage.
More and more mutalisks coming across the map right now. One thing to mention is the factory has been floating this entire time, so a siege tank attack is not going to come. That's something that Jaedong doesn't even have to worry about. But if you stay on mutas this whole time and your opponent starts getting a lot of Valkyries, that is somewhere that maybe FanTaSy can start to turn this around.
All right, he's coming in with the mutas again. He does a decent amount of damage. Even just having like 4 to 6 to 8 Lings there with the group, it's so much more damage that's going to be dealt. And we still see more Lings and mutas coming in here, and it does seem like Jaedong may be under the impression that he can basically overpower him here in this position.
He's really trying it right now, diving over and over and over, but that time did not go quite as well. He's lost a lot of mutalisks now. Honestly, I think he needs to start thinking about a different route. He's done well to keep that Marine medic count very low. He sees now that a Valkyrie will be coming out very shortly. Maybe I was wondering if he was maybe waiting to try to snipe it, but no, he does back up. More Lings, and finally a third base in the bottom right.
Yeah, we were waiting for that third base to come down. Jaedong post that overextension here. You know, he is still, I think, in pretty good shape. I mean, the sheer number of Lings and mutas out here, I don't think there's any moment that Terran can leave. Terran's supply is pretty low at this point in time, and the few Marines that are out, he's basically trying to just steer these Lings away from this position. But again, you know, the infantry count's so low that when are you ever going to be able to push out on the map? When can you actually try to attack?
Yeah, you have to wait for critical mass. There's no question about that.
And without a factory here, and I don't know if it's been landed yet or if it's still floating. It is still floating.
Ooh.
You could put lurkers outside the natural.
Yeah, if you get, like, let's call it on this map, about 6 lurkers out there, and there's no tank, the game is over.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't have any lurkers yet. He is moving some Hydras up, so he definitely has the idea to put lurkers up here, whether it's hold position or in a containment.
It's going to protect the third base.
Yep.
Going to go for a classical approach.
Yeah, and that is a small little choke. So if you place them just right, they're going to be very powerful there defensively. But this is flat ground as well, so not quite as strong as expanding up a ramp, which this map doesn't have any bases like that. So that's the best Jaedong can do.
Yeah, third base hard to secure for Terran on this map. Kind of hard to secure for all the races in general.
Yeah.
But I think especially hard for the Terran here. And so we'll see if and when Terran does go for that third. But, you know, with lurkers not done and occupying the map here just yet, FanTaSy has some room to try to come out here and roam. He's got 3 Valkyries. The Mutas can't really engage with this at all. And we actually have the factory landed now, Artosis.
Okay.
It's never too late to get that machine shop on there and start making tanks.
I guess so. You know, the Valkyries are very scary here. Like, the Mutas will just explode if they try to engage this army. But this army is not very good against lurkers. So as long as you have enough lurkers, it looks like we have 2 lurkers. Normally you'll make the egg in front of those to screw up Marines trying to run in. They'll kind of do some blocking. You'll notice he will almost certainly morph that pretty soon, because this attack coming in is very dangerous. So yeah, he makes that even a smaller choke. You can't really kill a lurker egg. it has 10 armor, so you're doing 1 or 0 damage against it.
And so he can use these Valkyries to basically start to bait this out. And keep in mind, if you lose the Mutas here, I mean, this isn't that different from PvZ, where you can just start to kill all of the overlords. What?
Oh no, Jaedong could be in some trouble. 2 of the lurkers get picked off. Some good circling micro here from Jaedong, keeping everything alive. He's gonna have to scan again, I think, to probably kill this. Oh, the Scourge coming up, trying to get rid of those Valkyries, and just 4 Marines end up finishing off those lurkers. More lurkers coming in right now. The Mutas as well, but the Valkyries are dealing with those.
Oh my God, this is insane. The lurkers can't quite catch the Marines.
FanTaSy with some great micro, runs back there once again. More coming up, but the lurkers running ahead. Lurkers are pretty darn fast. So if they can get over there and burrow, Jaedong may be able to secure this 3rd.
How are the Valkyries doing now? We know that the 3rd is going to be fine, but he's starting to kill overlords off. And that means that the Zerg is going to get supply blocked if he loses just a few more.
Oh no, he really, really needs to deal with that ASAP. A siege tank comes up in sieges. Not sure how many scans he has. It takes 3 siege tank hits to kill a lurker, so he's gonna have to scan multiple times to break through.
Yeah, another tank comes down here. And it looks like the Valkyries are gonna be sent back, maybe to sweep and try to find overlords. I'm not totally sure. This almost seems like it's too ambitious here for FanTaSy, but here we are. If Jaedong loses this base, he loses this game effectively.
That's very true. It's very true. A lot of lurkers set up behind. I think we might see a sandwich attack here. Now, Scourge, oh, and they do catch it, but enough Marines get out that some serious damage could occur here.
Yeah, he can run up there and start to really mow down these drones. The Lings and Lurkers are going to come here from the other side.
He's going to run up and burrow. Is he going to get the engagement that he's looking for? Flanks from the other side with lurkers as well. But it looks like FanTaSy is dealing with this flank beautifully.
What? He runs around. It's a lurker. The lurker's not in range of the tank. Oh my God. And in the main, we got to get a shot in the main. They're still there. Okay, he does drive the drones out, but the drop is picked off. The tank is picked off. We're back to square one.
But FanTaSy has done a lot with a little here. That flank from Jaedong, I was almost certain he was going to smash everything, and instead, he lost over half of his lurkers.
Yeah. It's funny, the base stays alive, but that base basically made all those lurkers, right? So it's like, it's kind of a crazy situation here. No 3rd base for FanTaSy, by the way. That's not part of this story here. He's got the Valkyries here to catch a drop. I think there may be a drop going into the main. I might be wrong. We'll see. But there is an Overlord over there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he needs to go Hive here. I think we need Defilers. If Jaedong's going to have a chance, he needs to become invincible for a bit.
Right.
Because right now, FanTaSy has kept so much pressure on that bottom right that, you know, everything Jaedong has built has had to be sacrificed to keep it. And yeah, I just saw the first Defiler.
Yeah, and so these Overlords are going to be picked off over here. Anything that he can get is going to be pretty handy. Now, I think he has Consume, maybe not. Well, he has enough anyways.
Gonna go ahead, burrow those lurkers, push the Marines and medics back. Time to get some more energy here, and Jaedong gonna push out of his 3rd and his natural at the same time.
Yeah, he baits him out again. The push on the tank is real. Looks like he should be able to just barely save this one.
So painful. 8 health tank gets out just in the nick of time. Jaedong, okay. This is where he needs to be pretty efficient, get out on the map, and get a 4th gas. It should be the one in the top right.
Oh my God. He's just going to start to elevator drop units in over here. He can keep unloading this. And the thing is, you know, how many Dark Swarms do you have for how many different attacks? He takes out the Hydralisk Den. or almost does, excuse me, decides to dive onto the Lurkers when he sees the opportunity presenting itself, and the Lurker's killed. It doesn't get covered in the Dark Swarm in time.
Yeah, it looks like he stims up, getting so many drones of Jaedong. Dark Storm goes down to save them for now. And, FanTaSy is just breaking Jaedong all over the place. Jaedong on the brink of defeat.
He's just going to dive right on top of the Nidus canal. He does take it out. There's 2 Lurkers over here. Jaedong seems to be barely hanging on at every corner.
Yeah, he's trying right now to clean out his main base, gets a Dark Swarm down there. The Lurker is going to have to hold this by themselves with just a couple Hydras that are going to go ahead and morph. Hopefully that Nidus can finish up. He can't be losing this hatchery.
I think he doesn't have any more scans.
You might be right.
I think he has no more scans, so he just avoids the Lurkers. The scan's probably a few seconds out, by the way. And I think Jaedong's realizing there's just not much left that he can do. He drops the hatchery. There's a Nidus canal that's going to finish again, so he can try to reclaim the spot. The only thing that's protecting that Nidus is the 2 Lurkers, though.
Yeah, it looks like FanTaSy going to go ahead and siege up there. Another Lurker burrows, but I think you're right. Doesn't seem as if there's any more scans.
It's a drop right on top of the Workers again, and a fire bat here. This time the Lurkers are going to fall over at the bottom, and that's going to be it. GG! FanTaSy is the Legends Tournament champion, defeating Jaedong 3-1.
Absolutely wild. FanTaSy, before Gamers8, completely retired. Gamers8 invites him, comes out of retirement, #1 on the ladder, and now #1 in this tournament, beating Bisu and Jaedong, who are both in ASL currently. Amazing play from our Terran legend.
Defeating the most legendary Protoss and the most legendary Zerg. And the 2 active legends, by the way, that are here. The 2 that are competing in ASL, the 2 that are constantly streaming themselves play the game. They both fall, and FanTaSy, who was in some ways considered the dark horse of the Legends Tournament, is now the champion here of Gamers8.
Beautifully done, no doubt about that. A big win, and hopefully this heralds many more for FanTaSy.
Over to the interview here on the stage.
FanTaSy, you took out Bisu, you took out Jaedong, and everyone was convinced Jaedong was going to win, including Jaedong. So what would you like to say to them?
비수랑 제동님이 이겼잖아요. 그 많은 사람들이 제동이 이길 것 같은 생각하셨는지 그 사람들한테 무슨 말씀 있어요?
I will dominate. Yes.
He will dominate.
So FanTaSy, we have to talk a little bit about your strategies. In game 1, you hit them with that timing attack there with the Marine Medic push. It's an old strat. Do you want to tell us why you made that choice?
첫 번째 게임에서 그 한 베이스 차리고 그 해병이랑 의료선을 끌고 그 공격했잖아요. 그 전략이 진짜 오랜만에 보는 건데 그거에 대해서 할 말이 있으신지?
조금 원래 준비한 건 아니고 즉흥적으로 했는데 막혀서 좀 불리한 줄 알았는데 하다 보니까 많이 유리해졌어가지고 좀 정신없이 게임했던 것 같아요.
I actually didn't plan on doing this. It happened spontaneously, and I thought it was gonna get against me, but it got better with the game, and I won, thankfully.
زي ما تشوفون فانتسي معنا في المسرح بعد فوزه. سألناه السؤال الأول إذا حاب يقول شيء، بس ما كان عنده رد للشيء اللي ممكن إنه يقوله للاعبين اللي هزمهم، لكن بنفس الوقت يوم سألناه عن الاستراتيجية اللي استعملها في الجيم الماضي، خصوصا أن الاستراتيجية هذه تعتبر من أقدم الاستراتيجيات اللي يستعملونها في البرود وور، لكن يقول إنه الاستراتيجية هذه أنا بنفسي ما كنت أتوقع أنها بتنجح، بس إني جربتها وكان شيء عفوي تماما، لكن بعد ما إني سويتها شفتها نجحت معي فكملت أسويها إلى نهاية الجيم.
Were there any players you worked with along the way to develop the strategies you used here?
다른 플레이어들이 연습했거나 아니면 전략을 준비한 플레이어들이 있나요?
아니요, 거의 레더 위주로만 준비했고 여기 오기 전에 뭐 한두 명이랑 아주 조금만 하고 거의 레더로만 했어요.
레더?
네, 레더.
So I didn't play with any players beforehand. I did it with the Raider, and I also played with 1 or 2 players only before this game.
زي ما تشوفون في السؤال الثاني سألنا فانتسي إذا في أحد من اللاعبين اللي موجودين معنا هنا في جيمرز 8 ممكن نتدرب معاه عشان يقدر إنه يحاول يطور الاستراتيجية هذه ويستعملها داخل الجيم، لكن كان الجواب يقول إنه لا، أنا صراحة يمكن لعبت مرتين مع كذا لاعب وما سويت ذاك الاستراتيجيات معاهم، واللي شفناه يعني بالجيم هذا كان منهم.
You took out 2 players who were actively competing. You seem to be in excellent form. Does this herald a return to professional play?
정말 대단한 성과를 보여주셨는데 그럼 판타지는 다시 프로게이머로 복귀하신 거예요?
아직 복귀했다고 말할 수는 없고요. 일단 올해까지는 뭔가 좀 준비한 게 있어서 그걸 먼저 할 것 같고 뭐 그 뒤에는 가능성은 있다고 생각해요. 네.
So it's not a return, but I'm thinking of, I have something that I'm planning to do. So after that finishes, I'm thinking about it.
أخبار جدا رهيبة قاعد نسمعها من فانتسي هنا في المسرح أعزائي المشاهدين، بعد ما هزم كل الاثنين اللي واجههم، بالذات جيدون. كلهم هذول لاعبين يعتبرون اكتف الآن في البرو سين في ستار كرافت، فسألناه إنه يعني بما أنك أنت هزمتهم هل معناته إنه ممكن نشوفك ترجع للكومبتيتيف سين وترجع تنافس كل البطولات في البطولات العالمية؟ لكن كان جواب يقول أنا حاليا يعني أنا ما راح أرجع، لكن بنفس الوقت أنا عندي شيء حاليا جالس أشتغل عليه، مجرد ما إني أخلص منه في احتمال إني ممكن إني أرجع إلى البرو سين.
Well, FanTaSy, today you make history as the first champion of StarCraft 2 Masters in Riyadh at Gamers8. So I'm going to hand you this pen and ask you to please sign your name to the wall of champions that you are beginning.
زي ما تشوفون أعزائي المشاهدين الآن جالس فانتسي يحط علامته على Gamers8 في أرض الأبطال، حيث إنه راح يوقع على الكاميرا، راح تستعمل هذه في الوال اوف فيم لكل الأبطال اللي فايزين معنا في Gamers8.
FanTaSy looks fantastic here as he's able to take out Jaedong in this final, looking brilliant whilst doing so. ZG and Benjamin Baker's here as well. Wow. Ben, hey, FanTaSy looked awesome. What a pleasure to watch him here.
It was really cool, actually. Like, the way that he dominated Bisu was like, okay, I kind of didn't expect that because everybody was talking about how good Bisu was and how good Jaedong was and stuff, but absolutely destroyed him. Then coming into this game, it was just like, holy crap, he was relentless, you know, like from StarCraft 2 days, I always remember FanTaSy being kind of slow and methodical. Here, he was not that at all. He was like a raging bull. Like, he just never stopped going. I mean, I know it's a completely different game, but he just did not let Jaedong breathe in any one of these games.
Yeah, definitely. We even got a little FanTaSy GG timing in there, ZG. That was amazing as well.
That was really nice of him to give it to us so we can talk about it. You know, otherwise we're going to be able to talk about it. He was winning the games too quickly and not losing any. So really nice of FanTaSy to let that happen. But seriously, a very impressive performance from FanTaSy, who it sounds like is basically just going to be coming up within like months and then dominating a bunch of current pros in Brood War and then leaving to do something else. I'm sure that's really super cool.
Super.
And that's going to be his thing until maybe he comes back in the future, which I just think is like, if he comes back in the future, maybe it won't be as weird, but imagine he doesn't, and then it's just like this little blip where he just dominated and then left. That would be, I mean, that's kind of like a mic drop in a sense. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would be. That would be, as we take a look back at the highlights here for these games as we continue things on. And you can see even just, not a sigh of relief, not really that at all. He knew how much control he had in these games here, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for him to go up against all these other guys as well, like I was telling Zombie backstage, I used to watch like Brood War VODs back in like 2005 when I was just starting my Warcraft 3 stuff.
Yeah.
These guys have literally known each other for like 20 plus years at this point, which is freaking crazy. And it's just nice to see legends of old still being damn good. And I mean, FanTaSy, I'll remember all these stories. We hear about MMA being like Boxer's protege and stuff, but FanTaSy really came on as like I Love Oove's protege. Like, he was the original one that got brought under his wing just as a really, really good Terran. And I mean, every Terran in the world's always lived under Flash's shadow, but it's very nice to see him just come out and bust out some real good plays.
And those were our Legends tournaments. Not only FanTaSy being able to win this one, but also MC able to win as well. This has been a real treat down kind of memory lane, but also, I mean, it's not even really memory lane for Brood War, considering that these guys, for the most part, are still competing over in ASLZG.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really awesomely done tournament. Like, Gamers8 has really delivered on this because they not only just got the guys and then, you know, got some commentators, right? But they also made these videos and really highlighted the history, as I feel like people should absolutely be doing. And really giving the respect that especially Brood War deserves as really the start of this kind of industry that is esports, because Korea set it up so well.
Yeah, definitely. I said it actually backstage, and I'm going to say it here just to put pressure on people. Give me a 16-man Legends tournament next year. I would absolutely love it. Just get so many old faces in there. That would be amazing. But anyway, no, it's probably not going to happen. We'll see. Anyway, we're going to go to a break, ladies and gentlemen, here at Gamers8. When we return, we actually have the main event on the way. Our last 4 remaining players in StarCraft 2 are going to battle it out for that first place prize of $150,000. So we'll see you in a few for more StarCraft.